Good evening and welcome to the December 2nd meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals here at Falmouth Town Hall. It's been a while since we've had this many people here, so welcome. Calling the meeting to order, and we'll ask everyone to please silence their cell phones. Introduce the board at this time, starting from my far right. Your far left is Jerry Patamas, who is an associate board member. To his left is James Morse, who is a full voting member. To my right is Scott Zelinski, who is the board's vice chair. My name is TJ Hurry. I am the chair of the board. To my left is Bob Dugan, who is the board's clerk, followed by Scott Peterson, who is a associate member. Also with us tonight is Noreen Stockman, who is the zoning administrator, and Ashley DeMello, who is our recording secretary for the night. The Zoning Board of Appeals is charged with applying the zoning bylaws for the town, and we consider requests for special permits, variances, and appeals as provided in the bylaws, which have been approved by town meeting and the Attorney General's office for the Commonwealth. All decisions the board makes are made through the public hearing process. The board's goal is to hear testimony from the applicant, from the public, and also to allow a full and fair discussion of the project prior to rendering a decision. To begin each hearing, the clerk will read the public announcement of the hearing and then present any pertinent information from the file, such as referrals from town departments and summarizing correspondences to the board. The applicant or the applicant's representative will then have 15 minutes to make a presentation, and time may be extended by vote of the board. The board will then question the applicant, and the public will be invited to comment as well. Public comment should only be directed at the project itself. We ask you to please refrain from making any personal or derogatory statements. Public comment can include an opinion in favor, in opposition, or it might just simply be a question about the nature of the project. We will limit the discussion in the interest of time in the event that comments become repetitive. All members of the public wishing to speak should wait to be recognized by the chair. You should come to the podium to the left here. We ask you to please state your name and address for the record. We do limit public comments to 2 minutes per person. And something new that we've been telling everyone, we do ask you to stand directly behind the podium, speak into the microphone, and the microphone does not amplify within this room. That's for the benefit of everyone watching at home on FCTV. As for either closing or continuing the hearing, when the board is satisfied that enough information has been presented by testimony and in the file to make a decision, by motion and vote of the board, the hearing will be closed. And the alternative, the board may continue the hearing to a future date and time certain. After a hearing is closed, no more testimony may be taken. And regarding board discussions and decisions, the board may then further discuss the project among ourselves. We make a motion to either deny or approve that would be made and voted upon. Such a motion will include a summary of key findings and conditions. An affirmative vote of 4 members, which is a supermajority, is required for approvals of motions on special permits, variances, and appeals. A split vote, such as a 3-2 vote, would be a failure to carry and would result in denial. Under Massachusetts general law, if a special permit is denied, the applicant cannot return to the board for 2 years unless the project is substantially different. So turning to our agenda for the night, we do have public comment followed by 1 continuation. We have 4 new hearings, and as usual, we do have a few items on our open meeting agenda. So first up for tonight is public comment. This public comment period is meant for anything that is not on the agenda. See a lot of people out there. I assume you're here for a few hearings tonight, so public comment on those hearings will wait until the appropriate times in the evening. But is there anyone out there, anything to say on something that is not on the agenda tonight? All right, seeing none. Moving on to our continuations at 6:30, we have application 74-21. Falmouth Boatyard LLC, 550 East Falmouth Highway in East Falmouth, requesting a special permit to construct a building to build boats. Voting members on this project are myself, Scott Zelinski, Bob Dugan, James Morse, and Jerry Patamas. And for the applicant, I do believe we have, is anyone out there? Oh, Attorney Glenn. There he is. Out there in the sea of faces tonight, Attorney Glenn.
Yeah, yes, well, thank you for hearing us first. So this is a continuation from October 21st. My name is Paul Glenn. I represent the applicant, Falmouth Boatyard LLC. And tonight with us This is a continuance. Tonight with us is the builder, Peter Langdon, who provided you with more detailed plans. You asked for that at the last hearing, to get more detailed plans of the building itself. Also with us tonight is Mike McGrath, who you asked to get a more, an easier-to-read site plan, and he's provided that with you tonight, for you tonight. We went through at the last hearing how this is an allowed use. It's boat building and a boatyard. It's an allowed use in the light industrial district. We showed to you that it was something that was fit right into the neighborhood there, which is all light industrial. You had some questions about that, but it was mainly you were asking about where exactly the lot lines were. And Mike provided a very colorful plan in that regard. I hope you all have it. Yes, and so it shows. So we're here not because the boatyard requires a special permit. We're here because there are other pre-existing uses on the property that are not allowed by right. They've been there for a while, and that's why we needed the special permit. We went over the 240, section 216, the different elements that you have to meet in order to get a special permit at the last meeting. And I think we're here just tonight as a well, the most important reason why it was continued, we were waiting for site plan review from the planning board, and we have that. They approved it without any conditions on it, other than we build it the way we proposed it. And they want to make sure we number all the buildings. And of course, we agree to both of those conditions. You have a copy of that site plan review. I think that's why we really extended to after the planning board meeting, which was last Tuesday. So I can go over it again, but are there any questions you wanted me before you look at the plans from?
Could I ask a question, Mr. Chairman?
Sure, go ahead, Bob.
So, yeah, I did have a question, Mr. Glenn. So one of the other things that we had asked for is that we know that there's other uses out there that wouldn't be allowed, and you were going to see if you found any documentation that actually permit them to take place on the site. You had the auto dealership in front that currently has a special permit.
It does, yes.
And the items in that special permit seem to have strayed. You mentioned that there was a Little River Boatyard was using the site. We don't have any documentation for permitting on that. And where this is a single lot not being subdivided, but you're just doing lease area, the property owner itself for the entire lot would be subject to any kind of enforcement for what's on the site. So do you have anything to submit that shows that any of the other uses are allowed?
To submit to, I missed the last part of that.
Do you have any kind of documentation to submit that what's actually occurring on the site is permitted and allowed?
There's this special permit that's part of the record here now. We have that allowed the auto dealership was allowed by special permit.
So on that, like on that special permit, there are lists of conditions, without going through them directly tonight. It just appears that that business may not be following what the permit called for. Regarding the testimony from the owner that Little River Boatyard was doing some boat storage out there, we don't have anything at all that shows that there would be any permits for that. Some of the boat storage seems that it might be on the auto section. There were comments on the auto permit, just for example, like no auto storage. So what I'm trying to do is that if we give a permit for this property and allow, this lease use to go forward, it's hard to do that if the parcel in general is in violation of uses. So that's why I was trying to find any kind of documentation that would show that the rest of it is in compliance, so that we're not giving a permit for a portion where the
I don't think there's
property-
anything that dealing with the boats in behind the car dealership. The car dealership is allowed by the special permit from 1966, I think it was.
So they actually, there were permits after that? It was there in early days, like you said?
Yeah.
And then they came back to the zoning board at one point at that time and got one permit, and then went for a modification, and that specifically stated in there what was allowed and what wasn't allowed.
Right, so the car dealership, it says you can have the cars there, just keep them neat in an orderly fashion. You can keep them in the front yard. I don't think there's any violation there. We knew about that when we applied. The boat storage, on that, there's boat storage, I was out there too on that site. That could be a matter for another hearing. That just kind of creeped over there, the boat storage from another parcel of land. I could make the argument that boat storage is an allowed use and you don't need a special permit for it. We've been through that. Or I could say that maybe we just have to get them out of there until we come back and get permission to do that. Would be two alternatives, but I think in either way, how we handle that, I think that this project could go forward, he could get this built. It seems like a pretty straightforward project. If the board feels that you need to come back to justify what creeped over from the other parcel, we could do that.
So that's something that would have to be done by the property owner, because they still own the whole parcel? So from my understanding, and unless you know differently, that when you have permits or non-permits on the property and like this, and it's not subdivided, so we couldn't just say,
Right.
we're separating this business from another business. The person responsible for the enforcement would be the actual owner of the property itself.
Right, so,
You just mentioned boat storage, just real quickly, so my understanding is that under light industrial, we're not actually going under boat storage, we're going under building, which is a
it's
different
a boat, yeah.
category.
So my client tonight, the applicant, has control over the site that's carved out in bold there through a long-term lease, and that's what he's proposing is a boatyard for up there. It is it's a lot, I think 21, 22 acres, the site, and there are other uses on it. I think there's no problem with, as far as I know, with the auto dealership. They seem to be complying with what I read in that decision. And the boats have creeped in behind the auto dealership. So I'm not, I think you're right. The owner, as opposed to the applicant tonight, would be responsible for that. The applicant tonight does not control that area of the whole site.
And the property's not being subdivided correctly, it's just leasable space?
It's not being subdivided.
Right, that's all I have.
All right. Thank you, Bob. Attorney Glenn, just to clarify, was anything more with your presentation, or did you want to turn it over to board questions?
Well, would you like to hear from the builder and the engineer to show what you asked for some more details in their plans. Would you like to hear from them? Okay. Well, Mike McGrath is right here. Why don't we have him first?
Good evening. My name is Michael McGrath. I work for Holmes and McGrath in Falmouth. We're the civil engineers and land surveyors that drew the plan. And you asked for some specific plans that I will show, and I have
Flash drive.
Do you want this mic?
there a way to prove that? Oh, you're good, all right.
Okay.
Can I see the, where, how do I go to the other two? 'Cause
Okay, so I'm gonna
Alright.
minimize that and leave that
Yeah.
there for you.
right there.
All right, I'm gonna open
All
all
right,
three, so you got
yes.
them right at the top.
Okay,
See
thank
'em?
you.
Yep.
Yes. One of the things that the board asked before was they wanted something that showed clearer that this was on on a portion of the site. So what I've done here is that
I don't know if that works on that.
Pardon me?
I don't know if that works on that.
Oh, I see. So I'm supposed to come
There
over
might be
here
another one for
and
that.
use the mouse. All right, yes. So what I've done is the entire parcel is colored in yellow, and then the portion that's being leased is shown right here. So the next thing I wanted to do was, you said that you wanted to see an aerial photograph or something similar like that shows the leased area in relationship to, for instance, the cranberry bog and the other uses. So in orange, I've colored up the lease area, and the instrument survey says that all of this storage is on the, it's not on the leased area, but when I transpose it onto the town website, there seems to be a distortion in that area. So you should look at this as a general location map and rely on the instrument survey. So one of the things is that there is a yellow line that shows the entire parcel. There's an existing dwelling, and before I identified that structure to the north as a house, but it's a stable. And then there is the car dealership, and then there's storage all along this boundary. And then down in here, there is a substantial amount of, well, these are stored boats that have been stored for many, many years. There's two structures down here. This is the cranberry bog. So if we go to my site plan, the colored exhibit right here, what I'm showing here is there is the structure in the front, there's the two houses, there's the stable. And here's the cranberry bog over here. And there is actually, this blue line is the creek, Bourne's, well, I think they call it a river, but the bottom line is that's the stream that flows through the middle of the cranberry bog. Then this blue line here is the floodplain. This is a coastal floodplain from the FEMA maps. Since it touches this boundary, it touches the base of the slope, there is a steep bank all along this area that's been described as a coastal bank. So what I've done as far as the site plan is concerned is I show that there is a swale that intercepts any surface runoff that flows in towards the cranberry bog. It's intercepted, and then it goes into a detention basin that's been designed in accordance with the Massachusetts Stormwater Management standards. Since it's adjacent to a wetland and adjacent to a coastal bank, we have to meet the Massachusetts Stormwater standards. The Massachusetts Stormwater standards requires us to design things for a 25 and 100-year storm. There has to be a detention basin, and then there has to be an area where the water percolates into the ground. the Massachusetts standards are in superior to the town of Falmouth standards, because the town of Falmouth standards is only a 25-year, 1-hour storm. In any case, during the process of having this reviewed by the planning board, we did get a letter from the town engineer that says that this does meet the town of Falmouth standards. One of the things that was also been done is we show that this access, it now meets a requirement that you wanted this to be two-way access, and it has to be constructed in accordance with the town standards for private roadways. So we show you on the plan, we have shown this to be paved all the way from the apron here all the way through. We've given you what's called a construction plan for a roadway, which is called a plan of profile. On there, it has drainage that meets the town standards under the, I've designed 23 miles of road in Falmouth, and I've designed leaching structures that the town of Falmouth actually uses the formulas. So we have got leaching systems in here that service this. Then there is a stub of a paved road here, and we've asked for a special permit not to pave this, so that we're showing paved access all the way to here, and then there's a paved access in front of the door, and that's specifically for handicap spaces. So there's handicap spaces here. To meet the provisions of the state code, since there is a, there may be hazardous waste here generated, there might be, we have shown a holding tank that under the provisions of the state code for boatyards, that has to be serviced and pumped out, and that's in case they have any wastewater that is off of, like, sanding down a boat or something like that. At the same time, there's a septic system located in this general direction. So as far as the building itself, there is dry wells to service the roof runoff. And so I've also shown you before that the fire trucks can easily maneuver all the way around this. And so I believe that the site design meets the performance standards of the town regulations. I do have copies of those plans if you want individual copies, but I did deliver a disc to the town. I'm sorry, to Maureen for your files. But I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have concerning the site design.
Thank you, Mr. McGrath. Board questions? Jerry?
No questions at this time.
James?
Thank you.
Scott? Bob?
No questions.
Scott?
No.
All right. Thank you, Mr. McGrath.
Well, Santa Claus came early. What should I do with this? Just leave it?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Peter Langdon is here too, but just for emphasis, oh yeah, here. The lot, this part over here by, here I am. Yeah. The part by the red, that is not part of this site, that is not. And the next lot over is not part of this site either. It's that. And the lot right here is not part of the site. Those are separate lots. The rest of it is one 20-acre site. I wasn't sure if that was made clear there. So this is Peter Langdon that can answer any questions about the building itself. Okay.
How you doing? Pete Langen, Langen Contracting. Yeah, I had submitted a revised floor plan because at one point, once things had changed, we were required to add a bathroom. So under building code, it requires, it's one bathroom for every 100 occupants, and there is a waiver for maximum occupancy of 25, which only requires one bathroom. So it doesn't require his and her, a male and a female bathroom. So that's the proposal, and that's what's on the plan. So other than that, the floor plan hasn't changed at all, other than that bathroom. And I know before you did have questions, and I believe Mike answered it okay. The building is going to be sprinklered. It's basically one big open bay, except for one divided wall in the middle. No office space, and that's it. Pretty straightforward.
Any questions for Mr. Langen?
I had a question. It was suggested that a possible resolutions were continuing this because of the parking of boats, as the storage of boats on another parcel.
Yep.
And that's one. Another one was removing those boats off that permit. Would you be amenable to saying you won't move forward until you reach an agreement
Well-
with the owner of the property?
Yep.
And those
Jerry.
boats are moved?
Well, what I can say, just because I've dealt with Alex, and Alex is
Yeah.
basically, he's the one who's going to be
Sorry,
leasing the.
Mr. Langen,
Oh.
he's not the owner or applicant, he's the builder.
Oh, I'm
Well,
sorry.
but I can
forgot.
help out, maybe clarifying that a little bit, because I know the area in question, and when Alex was here before, he did try to clarify it a little bit. That upper section that's where the auto repair shop is, and I know a couple of those boats are serviced by the auto repair shop, and that isn't the area that's primarily the boat storage. The boat storage that is down on the lower parcel, what I think everybody keeps referring to, is a large amount of boats, and I believe that, well, I know it's been there for years and years. I'm talking 25, 30 years they've been storing boats there. That upper section that we're talking about now, there may be, I know at last count, I think there was maybe 4 or 5 boats there, and those, I know a couple of those are being serviced, so that isn't, its primary function is not boat storage at all, and that is Little River Boatyard, and they do some dock assembly over there. And under that zoning, you could do assembly and, factory type work like that, so that's where they basically do that there. So that's just to help clarify. I know that area is definitely not a boat storage area, but just to get back on that, I know Alex, we're willing to work with whatever we need to do to get this thing cleaned up and hopefully get it all closed up tonight.
Any other questions for Mr. Langen? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what I suggested was that the two separate, it's one big parcel, but the two separate areas, two separate applicants. I think that you could allow this development to go forward, and if there's some type of inquiry from the building department to find out exactly whether those boats are being serviced by the automobile or they're being stored there, I think it would be appropriate to agree to remove the ones that aren't being worked on right now. But there's really no evidence to that effect here tonight. That could happen, and of course, Mr. Khan would have to agree to remove them if there's no permit for them. Or not Mr. Khan, but the owner of the property, the landlord, would have to agree to do that. So that's what I'm asking for tonight. If that, those boats weren't here at the beginning of the process. And there are a couple of boats there now, and I'm not sure which ones are being serviced and which ones might be stored. But we'd have to get rid of the ones that are just being stored. We haven't come to you with that. And we could, and I think the same thing with the parking lot. This isn't going to be a high-density area up there. And I think the non-paved aspect, we're looking for the special permit for that too, makes sense where we are. And I'm hoping the board will find positive on both of those matters tonight.
So just for clarification, Mr. Glenn, Mr. Khan, is he the owner or part of the trust that owns the property?
He's a family member.
That owns the property? So at our last hearing when we were here, and I think Mr. Khan had the testimony about some of the issues with the boats, and he kind of understood it wasn't something that was allowed. Have they made any kind of push to actually remove anything that they know that's currently there between the last hearing and this hearing, or have they let that continue?
You know, I don't remember that issue, to be honest, with you there, that, someone talked about another business being behind the boat, the, car dealership. And
He had
that-
named, I think, the different businesses when Mr. Zelinski had asked the question of what businesses are running out there.
Yeah, it
He
was,
kind of went over that he understood that, some things have been there and some haven't, and maybe, I just want to know if there was any, did they try to even
well,
review it or try to do
prompted
any
me to
kind
go
of
out there.
modification?
And I see that, and I see what Mr. Langdon talked about. So that's been the last couple of weeks that I've seen that. I think a condition to remove any boats stored there that aren't being worked on presently by the car dealership would be appropriate way
So
to
for
do it.
example, the special permit for the car dealership
Yeah,
doesn't allow boat repair. Allows automobile repair. So that's why I was saying on some of the things with these permits,
yeah.
Things change over the years, and maybe somebody brought something in and someone decided I could fix it, and then, things get a little bit out of control. But that's a example of something that has gone on since the permitting.
Since,
The issue my main issue that I have, and I'm just speaking for myself, I find it very difficult to do any approval on this parcel for anything without making sure that what's being used now and what's running there now is in compliance. And you can try to condition a new permit for a new business, but I can't add conditions on a new business on things that have to be cleaned up on another part of the parcel that don't have to do with the lease area. That's an owner issue. So I would just think that the owner at some point would have, tried to do something to say that these are things that we have to rectify, we understand it, and let's get that done first. And once that's done, then, continue with, expanding the use on the site.
usually if there's some type of activity that's wrong, there's just, the building commissioner will say something there, and then the property owner will react to it there. I mean, they're either, the auto body and our proposal, the auto dealership and our proposal are either linked or they're not. If they're not linked, then you could deal with this separately. If they are linked, you can put a condition on this permit and say, we have to, the owner of the property has to remove these before you can remove anything that is not legal before we begin construction on, or before we get an occupancy
Attorney
permit
Glenn.
on. Yeah.
If I may.
No, go ahead. Let's go.
Given the size of the lot and the fact that there is an unofficial subdivision for the private leasing of it, correct?
Well, there's a portion being
Okay,
leased.
and you said that there's no linking. By sheer virtue of the fact that all of this is happening on one parcel,
Well, there's
makes it
linking.
linked.
Yeah.
My question that I've been waiting to ask you is, why wouldn't you have just gone for a modification of the special permit, adding all of these items to it, to clean it all up in one package?
Well,
And I asked that, and I never got an answer to it, but I continue to hear the same questions and the same answers, except for that one. And I'm just looking for a simple answer of why you guys didn't consider that.
we came here before with a request for boat storage, and
I'm not talking about the boat store. I'm talking about everything that's happening tonight with respect to what businesses are being run there and the rest of it.
Well, it's-
Wouldn't it be cleaner just to put it all under one request? And then everything that's on that site is under one special permit? I know the plan looks good and there's unofficial subdivisions for private leasing, but that doesn't mean anything
Yeah.
when it comes to the permit itself covering one piece of property?
It doesn't mean anything. I don't know what you mean. I mean,
How many special permits can you, with different leases on one piece of property, how many can you do?
well, I don't know if there's a limit.
Well,
but
if
it-
there's one piece of property and there's a special permit for this, what keeps the next guy from coming in and just doing a million different special permits
On a 22-acre
on
parcel.
a single 22-acre piece of property?
Yeah, right. Well, the only thing that stood out was the boat storage. I mean, that's the only thing that's ever had any type of discussion. And
Anytime you request a special permit, that puts everything else on the table. I think that's why we're not talking about the other ones.
Yeah.
Right? Is that why?
why,
Why we're not asking for one permit for everything, because then it would open a can for whatever else is
well,
happening?
we didn't want to, we wanted to avoid the issue. He really wants to build boats. We wanted to avoid the issue of boat storage for now. I mean, that's why we did that. And I suppose we didn't really think of that in those terms, like trying to hide anything.
I'm
We
not
really-
saying you're trying to
we
hide, I'm
really-
saying to clean it
But
up.
I suppose if that would have, if there are problems someplace else, you would start looking at them if we tried to permit the whole 22 acres. That wasn't part of our strategy in any way, though. No, we just thought we had a simple plan up far away where nobody can even see it for a use that seems to fit in very easily into the whole.
Nobody's disputing that aspect of it.
Yeah, so the only thing that, the only thing that pops up now is some boat storage that came into an area that was for car sales and.
Thank you.
and-
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman? Follow up? If that's the issue, and it's relatively simple, I think you could continue this for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, move the boats, and then come back, and there would be no storage of boats where they're not supposed to be. And it would make the members of the board happier. Sounds like it's something that could be done.
But we could do that. It wouldn't answer Mr. Zelinski's question directly, that it wouldn't encompass, the permit we're looking for wouldn't encompass the entire 22 acres. It would just be encompassing our lease portion. I'd like to listen to comments from the rest of the board members if that would satisfy people, if we just need to remove those boats that are out there now.
Let's do this first. I'll turn it over to public comment, just check to see if anyone's here for
Okay.
this. Everyone might be here for something else, but public comment on this application, any question, comments, or concerns regarding this project tonight? Going once, going twice. All right. Back to the board.
Just want to discuss it?
Yeah, board discussion. Anyone want to start us off?
Yeah, just real quick, because I think I made my point.
ahead.
You've got one parcel, it's not a subdivision. If they were subdividing this lot out separately, I would have no issues with the building setup, the engineering, or any problem. The problem is they're not subdividing it. We know there's multiple uses there that aren't allowed. In my opinion, the auto dealership may be in violation of their special permit. If there's an issue with any of the special permits, it's up to the property owner to clear them up. I think they should confirm that there are no issues with the current special permit for the auto dealership and remove any non-allowed use from that industrial property. I know that some of the wording we keep getting is boatyard, boatyard, boatyard. Be aware, boatyard isn't allowed in industrial. We're looking at manufacturing of boats. So on a decision, we're giving them permission to manufacture boats in the building. We're not giving permission to store any boats. The issues with the parking spaces, there's so many because that's required as the square footage of the building. We had testimony at the last hearing from Mr. Khan that there were multiple leases on the property. So I think we also need to know what are the current leases on the property. Have they leased part of the property to Little River Boatyard that was mentioned? Because if so, they have to end that lease. So, I don't know if you just continue it to another date, if they know they can clear up all these issues soon enough. Will you give them the option to withdraw without prejudice, clean up the issues that have been brought up from the application, and then just reapply once those issues are cleared up. I don't think at that point the application process is pretty simple, because I don't think anyone has any issues with the building or the parking area. But I would not be in favor of doing any permit in this property until the other uses are curtailed and it's brought into compliance. I mean, we all know that in Falmouth, you know, there was commentary that, well, there's been no enforcement. Falmouth will only enforce if a written complaint is submitted by someone else in the town against the property. If not, they will drive by it all day long and not say anything. We as a board cannot go and do issues with properties.
We can't go there and ask questions
No,
about
we
what's
can't
what.
go and ask questions. I mean, we
Can't go to
could see
town hall
issues,
and ask.
but we
We can
can't.
only rely on the applicant.
The aerial photos that were submitted, and I know it's just for reference, clearly show boat storage. I understand the property next door behind the gym that has a majority of other boats is a separate lot, so it's not discussed here. But I think it may be the same property owner, so I don't know if that has any issues with that also, so.
Maybe, I think you had a good suggestion, Bob, of, withdrawing the permit without prejudice. That gives them enough time to get it together, rather than another continuance, and then something else pops up and another continuance. I'm assuming you want some definite, or your client wants definite closure. I'm not sure. Can we get a response from him now?
I'd like to have a little bit more.
Yeah,
more
that's what I'm
discussion
saying.
before
I
we-
mean, so I guess I would be against voting for the permit without things being clarified more.
James, how do you feel?
Share some of the same concerns Mr. Dugan has about the multiple use of the property. I have absolutely no problem with the proposed design, the engineering of the structure. My concern would be multiple special permits that may have restrictions on one, permissible activity on the other, and just having a lot of conflict. So I think that Mr. Zelinski's questions about maybe modifying, having one permit for the property might be appropriate.
Scott?
So if we could continue on that, just so I'm not wasting everybody's time here with it. If you, I haven't heard about any violations, there are suggestions, so it's kind of hard to disprove that there aren't any violations, you know, I mean, I don't know how we do that.
So when we do a site visit, like we all go look at the
Yeah,
sites.
yeah.
Boats were clearly seen.
You what?
You can clearly see boats.
You
when we
can
visit the
clearly see
site.
boats,
We know that's a violation.
right?
If you review the special permit for the auto dealership, and I'm not gonna do that tonight, look at the property of the auto dealership and make sure that what's occurring there is actually part of this permit. Boat repair and service is not part of the special permit for the auto dealership. So those are the issues you want to make sure the auto dealership is complying with what's actually allowed. If not, and they need to modify their permit to see if they can get it allowed, they could do that.
Yeah.
But you're not looking at separate parcels, you're just looking at, division areas, and, again, I don't have a problem with the building, the parking, the engineering, but the only time we have teeth with anything like this is when somebody applies for a permit.
And does the paid parking present, the lack of paid parking, that present any issues for the board?
I'm not gonna go through the whole auto permit, because that's something that I would let an applicant or something go through and just show that they're in compliance with what, maybe, we've got an enforcement officer, whether he wants to get involved or not, that would be up to him. Or if the applicant wants to talk to the enforcement officer to say, what is allowed, am I complying with the permit?
Well, talking to the building commissioner to ask for an opinion about what's allowed in a light industrial district might be good. Just a point of clarification, the town planner who started the issue about boat storage versus boatyard said that a boatyard is a legal use.
But we don't have that. And in their permit that they sent us for their meeting, they didn't discuss boat storage
They
or
didn't
use.
discuss anything.
They just look at site plan, so they want to make sure you have
They
enough
looked at site
parking, that
plan.
the building is set up.
But he read at a public meeting how this was triggering, what the difference was.
And I know
here.
that when you applied the first time, there was a lot of confusion over that issue, and there was even talk that maybe applied to town meeting to get a boatyard use as an allowed use, but it was pretty clear that boat storage isn't allowed.
Well, I don't know about that. And so would a determination by the building commissioner that boat storage is, we could get a use and occupancy for boat storage if we could build the building, would that satisfy the board about boat storage? I mean, I thought there was no opinion, formal opinion given that
But
boat
weren't you
storage.
applying under this as manufacturing because there was so much confusion over boat storage?
No, we just applied, we talked to the town planner, the only, and he said a boatyard is allowable. And a boatyard is an allowed use, and he read it to the rest of the board while we were sitting here tonight. I don't think there's any confusion about it, but that's not for tonight, right? That's not for tonight. But a determination by the building commissioner, that he'd give use and occupancy for boat storage, does that work for the board? Do we need to do more than that?
I don't think it covers the question of the rest of the parcels.
Yeah, no,
I mean,
it doesn't.
That's,
It
the-
doesn't.
that's the thing that's holding everything
And that's
up.
what's holding it up tonight. But I'm trying to do it so we're efficient the next time around. Just trying to public comment there.
The project that you have presented in that red parcel,
Yeah.
nobody has any problems with that.
Yeah, okay.
Attorney
All
Glenn. And we keep dancing around that same issue on the outside of that red parcel.
All
We
right.
both know what we're talking about, I think, correct? There are other things that need to be cleaned up in order for,
You know, I don't know about that. I've been out there more than once, but
I'm not
I'll
talking
dig
about
into
physically
it.
cleaned up. I'm talking
I'll
about,
dig into that. There's suggestions that there's some other potential violations, and we'll have to dig into that, to see if that's true or not. So I mean, I can count and I can do math a little bit there. Mr. Chairman, can we withdraw this without prejudice? I request that we withdraw this without prejudice.
Certainly entertain that motion. Would anyone like to?
Yes,
make that?
so that I make a motion to allow the withdrawal without prejudice with application 74-21, Falmouth Boatyard LLC, 550 East Falmouth Highway, East Falmouth.
Thank you, Bob. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, I'll
You
give
got
that one
it.
to James. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you,
And
Mr. Chairman.
thank you for your time
board
tonight.
members.
All right, up next, on to our new hearings. We have application 92-21, Mastroianni et al., Victoria Dalmas Esquire, 113 Lakeview Ave in Falmouth, filed an appeal with the Falmouth Town Clerk appealing the interim building commissioner / zoning enforcement officer's determination.
So application 92-21, Robert L. and Stephanie S. Mastriani, care of Victoria Dalmas Esquire, 15 Cape Lane, Brewster, Mass., has filed an appeal with the Falmouth Town Clerk pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 40A, subsection 8 and 15, and 240-202 of the Code of Falmouth, appealing the interim building commissioner, zoning enforcement officer's determination. Subject property is at 113 Lakeview Ave, Falmouth, Mass. For referrals, we did receive one from the rec department, and it's gonna be outdated now, but this was from November 4th. The Recreation Department has made scheduled changes to the time of use. The courts are open. All town-owned public courts are open at dawn to dusk. The Lawrence School courts are open 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., or dusk for pickleball, and 9 a.m. to dusk for tennis. Only one pickleball court is open 7 days a week. 5 courts are open only 3 days per week. The Recreation Department would like to keep the schedule as is. I have requested capital funds to purchase soundproof curtains to help mitigate the sound created by pickleball, and that's from Joe Olenek. We did receive, I know the board's reviewed everything, the packets from Attorney Dalmas, which also included the Town Recreation Committee meeting minutes of September 8th, 2021, August 11th, 2021, and July 21st, 2021. There were also affidavits put here from neighbors in the area that are supporting the appeal. There was a letter submitted on December 2nd, 2021, from a David Ralston and Erin Ralston at 54 Lakeview Ave. To Falmouth Zoning Board of Appeals regarding comments on the appeal regarding the usage of courts at Lawrence School. We reside at 54 Lakeview Ave, close to the courts at Lawrence School. Our experience with the courts has been overall positive. We enjoy having recreational opportunities that are so convenient and accessible, and we take joy that so many community members can engage in physical and social activities. Such recreational resources are a huge benefit to the health and well-being of Falmouth. We can certainly hear the sounds of court usage at our house, including the distinctive sounds produced by pickleball. At our location, the level of sounds are not inconsistent with other aspects of living on a relatively busy street in a relatively high-density neighborhood and near a large school. Other neighbors who are in close proximity to the courts may experience a different soundscape, and we encourage the continued efforts by the town to minimize the impacts on the more proximate neighbors, including by regulating and monitoring hours of usage and installing noise barriers if appropriate. Our sense, visually and audially, is that users of the courts have been respectful of the posted hours, particularly since the Recreation Department head, Joe Olenek, made concerted personal efforts over the summer to inform users. We have not gotten the sense the court usage is excessive or continuous, but it would be better to assess this with consistent monitoring rather than anecdotal reporting. Overall, we feel like the renovation of the courts has been a big net positive for the neighborhood rather than a negative. We are respectful of the differing experiences and opinions of our neighbors, and we are glad the town is making effort to come up with a usage plan that takes into consideration everyone's interest. Again, that's signed David Ralston and Erin Ralston, 54 Lakeview Ave.
Anything else, Bill?
No, everything else is in the packet, so when we get the presentation.
All right. And for the applicant, we have Attorney Dalmas, is it?
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Victoria Dalmas. I am an attorney with Senni and Associates at 15 Cape Lane in Brewster. I represent several residents of the Lakeview Avenue residential area, John Churchill at 75 Lakeview Avenue, Michael Galasso at 107 Lakeview Avenue, and Rob and Stephanie Mastroianni at 120 Lakeview Avenue. I would like to present a PowerPoint presentation this evening. We might run a little bit over the 15 minutes. Is that okay?
Sure. When we get there, we can certainly vote to extend if
Okay,
the
thank
board
you.
wants to.
And I do have two additional speakers that I would like to welcome to the podium. One is Susan Keller of Kinlan Grover, and also Zachary Weiss of Noise Control. Zachary is the author of the acoustical analysis that is included in the board pack. Just before I get started, my clients would like me to relay that they have nothing against pickleball or pickleball players. This is really about the noise issues. So with that said, we're here to appeal the building commissioner's denial of our request that pickleball cease and desist at the Lawrence School premises. As a starting point, this matter involves two districts, the public use district, which straddles the single residence district in which my clients reside. It also involves an expansion of court use to include a new racket sport, pickleball, including a new single dedicated court for that new use. The resulting impulsive, percussive pop, pop, pop sounds that are frequently heard throughout the day, every day, are substantially in excess of what my clients have been historically exposed to, and it is the source of injury in this matter. My clients have sought relief for well over a year now from the ongoing daily injurious sounds of pickleball play, permeating in and outside their respective homes. To the best of our knowledge, there was no site plan review or acoustical analysis undertaken in pickleball siting at the Lawrence School premises. Site review would have resulted in notice and an opportunity to be heard regarding that proposed use. Interestingly, a simple web search of pickleball and noise compliance reveals that pickleball siting should ideally be at least 500 feet from a residence. We're not challenging the historical shift of the tennis and basketball courts towards the existing residence, which you can see in comparing these historical GIS images. But if there is a subsequent expansion of use at the courts, and a very noisy one, which has occurred here, it should have taken into account the close proximity of the residences. And proximity is unique here. I've set out the approximate distances of my clients, and also, while I don't represent Ms. Parmenter, she is the closest, and she is behind the scenes, having submitted an affidavit for the board pack, and also signed the neighborhood petition that's in the board pack. And she is similarly anxious, as are my clients, for relief from the pickleball noise. As mentioned, ideal siting of pickleball courts is at least 500 feet away from the closest residence. Expert acoustical firms note that where pickleball siting is within 350 feet, even worse, 150 feet of residences, expensive mitigation measures will likely be necessary. So, what do the bylaws tell us? Well, we know in the public use district, as well as the single residence district, parks, playgrounds, and recreation buildings are as of right. And courts are within the definition of recreation buildings. So we know the uses are as of right. However, as of right is not without limitation. The nuisance provision in the zoning bylaws sets out a qualitative as compared to quantitative, and we will talk a little bit later about quantitative standards, that prohibits uses which would be offensive because of injurious or obnoxious noise. As the qualitative standards, injurious and obnoxious, are not specifically defined in the bylaw, it is appropriate to look at other legal sources to understand their plain meaning. And in applying the qualitative standard, we must engage in a facts and circumstances analysis. Notably, before I do that, the bylaw itself does not take into account a large investment made in the courts. The bylaw also doesn't talk about the number of supporters of pickleball at the school. And the bylaw also doesn't talk about the health benefits of pickleball. It's a simple qualitative standard of whether the use is obnoxious or injurious. And we know that the bylaw does clearly state that at some point, sound levels generated from an activity will comprise an actionable sound compliance violation. Sorry. So how do we determine if a sound violation has occurred? One way we do that is testimony, and we have much of it from the Lakeview Avenue community. I won't go through all of these excerpts that I have on the slides. I'll forward as I speak. But to summarize the feedback of my clients, as well as additional residents, these folks for over a year now have engaged in numerous mitigation efforts. The use of noise-canceling headphones, the avoidance of outdoor spaces at their respective residences. They're not using their decks, they're not using their backyards. They're closing all their windows and their patio doors, including in the summertime, to block out the noise. And they're leveraging other sound sources to drown out the noise. So turning on stereos, turning on AC units, even when they don't need them. And they are also experiencing health issues, including increased stress and anxiety levels, headaches, and sleep problems. And daytime napping during pickleball is not an option. And ultimately, they are leaving their homes. That the Recreation Committee has made some minor adjustment to pickleball play hours misses the point of understanding that there is a sound compliance violation at issue with siting pickleball so close to these homes. One comment that rang quite true to me was of my client. It said, "You never know when the noise will begin or end." It's compelling because it speaks to the very nature of impulse sounds. They put you on edge. Another way that we can support the qualitative standards in the noise and the zoning nuisance bylaw is to point out that the Recreation Committee itself, whom have made well-intended efforts to try to resolve the problem. We have admissions of some members who have made site visits to the courts and experienced the pickleball noise firsthand, admitting that there's a serious problem, and in the words of one member, recognizing that a siting mistake has been made. So while it comprises a separate basis for relief outside the board's jurisdiction, nuisance at common law may be helpful by way of reference. It focuses on people of ordinary sensibility, determining whether or not there is a substantial and unreasonable interference with the use and enjoyment of property. In this matter, neither my clients nor the neighborhood residents who support my clients are coming at this as hypersensitive human beings. These are ordinary folks who want and should receive relief from the noise levels at issue. Nuisance law also makes clear that noises of everyday life are not likely within its protection. Here we have a neighborhood that has not historically engaged in complaints where the historical uses of tennis and basketball are concerned, or for that matter, in relation to the sporadic sporting events such as the road race and the marathon. Pickleball is a new addition to the courts and of a noisemaker nature significantly in excess of what my clients are used to. Also not within the board's jurisdiction, but which might be helpful in its review of the pickleball sound levels at issue, is the state air pollution law and associated regulations and policies. Noise, or rather sound, of sufficient intensity and duration may comprise air pollution. Air pollution, as set out in the governing regulation, is qualitatively, not quantitatively, qualitatively defined in certain respects very similar to the town's qualitative injurious standard for nuisance. And where there is a sound level compliance violation, such as we believe is triggered by the addition of pickleball at the Lawrence School courts, the regulations place responsibility on the property owner, here the town, to come into compliance. It is notable that the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection also created a policy setting out quantitative standards. The policy is neither a law nor a regulation promulgated further to a law. That said, the policy's quantitative noise violation criteria have been recognized by the courts. To broadly summarize the policy, a sound compliance violation occurs, and for which mitigation is required, when the noisemaker sound levels exceed 10 decibels over ambient on an A-weighted scale. The A-weighted scale represents, well, our human hearing facility. However, the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection itself has recognized that the policy's application is not well suited for impulse sounds such as pickleball. This is due to the averaging of the impulse sound wave peaks and valleys. In other words, the resultant averaging, like a flat line, doesn't translate well into what the receptor, my clients, actually experience. Thus, acoustical engineering firms will adjust how they quantitatively represent the data so that it translates more optimally into what a human being experiences. Also, to guide the board by comparison, the town itself has enacted a bylaw in the wind turbine setback context, requiring a more conservative 6 dBA over ambient standard as the sound level compliance standard, given in part because the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection policy is imperfect or has shortcomings in relation to impulse sounds. While wind turbine noise is different than pickleball noise, they both have an impulse element. The wind turbine noise is more of a whoosh, whoosh, whereas here we have the pop, the percussive pop, pop, pop. And lastly, there is the town's non-zoning noise bylaw that applies to, among others, any mechanical sound-making device or instrument, which should by definition include pickleball, and which presumes noise compliance, non-compliance, if plainly audible at 150 feet from where the sound is produced.
Attorney Dalmas, I hate to interrupt, but I do have you at the 15-minute mark there.
Okay,
Would you like an extension?
Yes, please, thank you.
How much time do you think you need?
I think 15 minutes,
An additional 15 minutes?
10 minutes.
All right, everyone, we need decorum. It's the board that makes the decisions, not the crowd.
We have our acoustical expert here. I think you might have questions for him.
Sure. Can
And
we
we
agree
have
on
a
10, can we agree on 10 additional minutes?
Sure.
All right, we'll just need a motion by the board
Mr.
to
Chairman, I'll
make
make a
that.
motion to extend the presentation of the applicant by 10 minutes.
All right, motion made by Scott to extend by 10 minutes. Thank you, Scott, and now second by Bob. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, 10 additional minutes. Attorney Dalmas.
Thank you so much. So what I would like to quickly do then is to play a video, if that's okay for the board.
Certainly can.
This is a video that is taken from Mr. Churchill's property. And, well, not perfect, but it should give a sense of, if you haven't had the opportunity to experience the pickleball, it should give you a sense of what is going on. Just gives you a bit of an aerial proximity. Okay. So with that, I'm going to kindly ask Zachary Weiss to come up and talk a bit about the acoustical expert analysis that he did.
Hello, my name is Zachary Weiss. I work for Noise Control Engineering as a consultant, and as was mentioned earlier, I was the one who performed the noise study, which was submitted for this case. Very briefly, what I want to do is kind of show how what you've heard qualitatively so far translates into the measurements we took over the course of one day of pickleball activity. This first slide is intended to show the difference between 30 seconds of ambient noise without any pickleball on the court, and then 30 seconds of noise with some of the higher levels we mentioned during pickleball. As Attorney Domus mentioned earlier, because it's impulsive noise, we can't just average the sound level across the entire 30 seconds. What we've done is taken the sound level at each 1/10 of a second, which corresponds to what the human ear is able to resolve. The blue line corresponds to an ambient period. The red line corresponds to a period with high pickleball play. And you'll notice these spikes reflect the impact of the pickleball racket with the ball. Oftentimes, if you look at on the scale of the graph, these impulses are 10 dB above the surrounding noise, 15 dB above, sometimes 20, sometimes even more than 20 dB. When we compare that to the MassDP criteria, which suggests that, or says that 10 dB above ambient is what's considered an excess, we're seeing excesses on the closest property quite a bit above that. Okay, so if we zoom out to measurements taken over the course of the day, we can start to see how many of these individual impacts above 10 dB and higher levels like 15 dB occur. This graph, just for convenience, breaks those intervals down into 15-minute intervals, and we often see during high pickleball activity 400 or 500 of these impulses, 10 or more dB above the background level, which corresponds to, for an hour of play, 1,500 or 2,000 impacts. So it's quite a lot of these impacts that occur over regular use of the courts. Lastly, as was mentioned in the quantitative criteria, there's also a pure tone condition, which is defined using these large frequency buckets called octave bands. What this graph shows is the frequency spectrum from 2/10 of a second. So immediately before the paddleball impact and then during the paddleball impact in the blue and orange lines. What you'll notice is that in the 1,000 hertz band, there's a big peak that occurs once the paddleball impact happens. The criteria as defined is 3 dB above the neighboring bands or more. What we see in this graph is over 5 dB higher than on each side. This criteria is intended to reflect the distinctive timbre of the sound and how that can also lead to annoyance. So that is the brief summary of these quantitative measurements.
Could I ask a quick question, or should we want to
We're
continue?
going to hold off on
Okay.
that for now, Jerry.
So with all that said, the building commissioner, in response to our request that pickleball cease and desist at the Lawrence School, recognized the problem, but oddly refused to cease the activity because he believed a solution was in the works. If something is in violation, it should be shut down until a solution is in place. And the violation has been going on now for well over a year, and in circumstances where the siting of pickleball at the school involved, to the best of our knowledge, no advanced acoustical analysis, or for that matter, the rigors of site plan review. Had that occurred, we would not be here. So my clients respectfully ask the board that it overturn the building commissioner's decision and issue a cease and desist order ceasing all pickleball play at the school until such time as this activity has been reviewed by the Site Plan Reviewing Board, and site plan approval, which takes into consideration possible mitigation, has been completed by the Planning Board. It is within the board's powers, and the rigors of site plan review are appropriate to this expansion of use, and to determine if any mitigation is viable in the circumstances from a compliance perspective. Lastly, to ensure the cease and desist compliance, my clients also ask that the pickleball court lines and any nets are removed, and that new signage is posted prohibiting pickleball. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I know we usually turn it to board questions immediately, but I think we do have,
Excuse me, did you want to assign who was voting?
there's 5 of us here, right? Sorry, there'll be, guess we can do all 5 of us, right? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
Tonight,
I
Mr.
think-
Chairman.
You missed yourself.
Yeah, I did, didn't I? We've been short recently. All right. I usually flip a coin beforehand. I'll give this one to Scott.
Okay.
Didn't do my usual coin toss before. Sorry, it's been a long week for me. All right, now that we have that out of the way, we do have Town Council Attorney Frank Duffy with us tonight. Attorney Duffy, would you like to speak to this matter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Frank Duffy, Town Council. I'm here on behalf of the Town of Falmouth and the Recreation Committee and the Recreation Director, who, Joe Olenek is here with me. Sandra Cuny from the Recreation Committee is here. They don't plan to make any remarks, but they will be here to answer any questions that you may have that they can answer at the end of my remarks. So I'm going to start out by asking the board to affirm the decision of the building commissioner as a reasonable response to the complaint of noise at the Lawrence School filed by the Lawrence School neighbors. The decision was made in good faith after consultation with them and with the recreation director and the recreation committee. The commissioner's decision may not be what the neighbors want, but if we look at the whole picture of what's going on here, it is a reasonable response, and I believe it should be and is worthy of being affirmed. I also want to ask the court to consider, excuse me, I said the court, I mean the board. It's just habit.
Quasi-judicial agents.
I also want the board to perhaps avoid a rush here to judgment. I don't consider there being any present urgency to this matter. The pickleball season is over. It'll be over for the next 3 or 4 months. There is plenty of time for the stakeholders to meet and consider alternative solutions, which perhaps haven't been discussed yet. And also, we have a town meeting coming up in April, where if money needs to be appropriated for mitigation purposes, it can be put on the warrant and voted at that time. But by the time the pickleball season rolls around again, we may have an answer to this if we need, to the extent we need one. And I also want to let you know that the Town of Falmouth and the Recreation Committee and the School Committee, which owns this property to the extent that it is involved here, are aware of the neighbors' concerns and willing to work towards a solution, and I've been affirmed of that by them. In resolving this matter, I asked the board to consider a number of things that I mentioned, look at the entire picture. The Board of Appeals is focused on the zoning issues that are involved here. And there are a number of concerns, 2 basic concerns. One is a neighborhood concern. The neighborhood consists of the people identified in the letter of appeal. That's 3 homeowners on the Lakeview Avenue street. And we know that there are several others who are involved. I don't really know how many people are involved totally on behalf of this appeal, but it's a relatively small number. On the other side, we have the entire town of Falmouth, the community. And the community provides recreational opportunities for all its residents. Now, pickleball is a relatively new and very popular sport. It wasn't around years ago, and I only heard about it a few times in the last few years myself. But it's been estimated by the Recreation Committee that we have about 300 or 400 active pickleball players in Falmouth, and I suspect there may even be more than that. Can't prove it. Now, the neighbors initially asked the building commissioner to issue a cease and desist order to stop all pickleball at the Lawrence School grounds. And they clearly are not satisfied with his response and now ask the board to issue the cease and desist order. The board, of course, can do this with a concurring vote of 4 or 5 members, and it has the power and authority to act on behalf of the building commissioner whose appeal is before you right now. I would also like the board to realize that the building commissioner, when he reviewed this, had the benefit of the sound study that Mr. Weiss referred to. He considered it as a one-day study, not necessarily to be truly representative of the situation. And I would suggest to the board tonight that you might also want to consider that when you take this matter under advisement and decide it. The reference to the provision in the zoning bylaw, section 240-110 nuisances, is a rather perplexing provision of the Falmouth zoning bylaw, and it has been for a long time. It primarily deals with nuisance without defining it, which is unfortunate. And perhaps when we recodify the zoning bylaw, we might put a definition in, but that's to come. So Massachusetts law today holds that a nuisance occurs when a property owner, that would be the town, creates, permits, or maintains a condition or activity that causes a substantial and unreasonable interference with the use and enjoyment of property of another, and it requires proof that the principal actor, here, the town, acted intentionally and unreasonably or in a negligent, reckless, and abnormally hazardous manner. And I would suggest to the board that none of those triggers exist here. The use of the Lawrence School grounds for recreational activity is normal. It's expected. It's historical. It's been going on for years. There is absolutely no intent on behalf of the town or the Recreation Committee or anybody else to harm the folks who bring this complaint before you, because the use of the school grounds is reasonable, and the sounds of pickleball may be annoying at times. I will not deny that, but the use of the courts for pickleball is limited in duration to certain days and hours, and it has a seasonal component. We're now entering the season of non-use. Let's take a minute to take a look at the components of the building commissioner's decision. First, he noted that the Recreation Department has limited the hours of play, and in the referral that you got from the Recreation Committee, they did mention this. There are 5 courts for pickleball. 1 court is dedicated to that sport uniquely, and it may be played during daylight hours. There are 4 courts that are shared with tennis, and they are used for pickleball only on 3 days a week. They're used Monday, they are used Wednesday, and they are used Saturday. The other 4 days of the week, there is no pickleball. The hours of operation are from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. or dusk, whichever is earlier, so the maximum that you could have is 10 hours, and it's, I can't give you an hour, but if you notice the chart that Mr. Weiss put up recently, it seemed to be mostly a morning activity on that particular day. The permitted hours of play are posted to the Recreation Committee website and by signs on the fences at the courts. Secondly, the building commissioner noted that the Recreation Committee requested funds in a capital budget request at the November 15th annual town meeting to purchase sound attenuation material to be deployed around the perimeter of the fences facing the homes of the folks who are filing the complaint with you tonight. This budget request, I would suggest to you, is proof of an affirmative, is affirmative proof of good faith and a sincere effort to accommodate the concerns of the neighbors. However, at the most recent town meeting on November the 15th, this item came up for discussion. And 2 of the neighbors, who are both present today in this room and applicants here, got up and spoke against the appropriation of money to attenuate this nuisance. I don't know to what extent they swayed the body, but clearly the body denied the appropriation of the money. So when Mr. Gore was aware of the fact that the Recreation Committee had responded to the request with the appropriation of money for attenuation. He didn't know that the article would be defeated at town meeting with the very people in this room arguing against its passage. It's something that I have never actually ever seen before, and I've been to many town meetings, over 100. Rarely do you see people argue against something that's intended for their benefit. Also, we'll never know what these attenuation cloths or attenuation barriers would do, because we can't put them up right now. Now, Mr. Olenek, who has surveyed some other adjoining towns, has told me that in Mashpee they had a similar situation. They put up attenuating sound barriers and they achieved some positive result. I'm not saying how much would be achieved here, but there was some achieved. The other thing I'd like to point out, and the building commissioner did consider, that the pickleball is like another outdoor sport. It's weather dependent and it has a certain seasonality to it. It's basically stopped probably through the end of March, maybe beginning of April. So the building commissioner concluded, and I just would like to read these words from his decision. He says, "This office will not be taking any enforcement at this time." Please note that he did not deny the neighbor's complaint and request. He just observed that it was not ripe for a cease and desist order at this time. The cease and desist, the decision of the building commissioner does not foreclose continued dialogue by the parties, and it does not foreclose future requests for enforcement or further action by the building commissioner if he deems it appropriate. I'd just also like to mention a point to you and give you some context that these pickleball courts are on school property, and physical education and recreation are normal and expected components of the educational experience of public schools in Massachusetts and everywhere. So if the school department, for example, were to adopt pickleball as a physical education activity, the courts could be used for pickleball probably under the educational exemption of Chapter 48, Section 3 of the Zoning Enabling Act, which is the Dover Amendment. So I would ask the board to consider the entire matter in its context, consider the response of the building commissioner to be reasonable under the circumstances, and to affirm his decision. So I thank you very much.
Thank you, Attorney Duffy. Scott, you want to?
Frank, did anybody from the building commissioner staff go out there and witness any of that, the noise, or sit with them and or did they make the determination
I
from their
cannot make
office?
that representation. I simply don't know.
Thank you.
I have a
Thank you,
question.
Mr. Chairman.
Jerry?
What options do we have before us? We can either affirm or deny. We cannot continue this, because there's a lot more information we could use.
Well, no, wait. You're being asked by one party to overturn the building commissioner's
Correct.
decision and to issue a cease and desist order.
Right.
We are asking you to affirm the building commissioner's order and allow it to stand, with the understanding that if conditions change, it can be brought forth again.
So there's no in-between grounds.
Well, you know, I don't think it would be appropriate for this board to engage in negotiations or to get the
Not
parties-
us, it
No,
would be the
it's not
town.
your-
It
it's not
would be
your
the
role.
town and,
If there's to
The
be a
neighbors.
resolution, it would have to go back to the Recreation Committee and voted by the Recreation Committee, and if there's money involved, it would have to go through the usual process. An article would have to be prepared for town meeting, it would have to go through the Finance Committee, get their imprimatur, and it would go before town meeting.
Okay.
And that would be in April of 2022. And just to let the board know, there's not an awful lot of time to prepare for an April of 2022 town meeting, because the warrant will close the second week of January, which is about a month from now.
So that's the reason they're looking for you don't want the cease and desist order. You
That's
just-
basically what I said, yes, sir.
Anyone else? Attorney Duffy, sorry to keep you up there.
Oh, okay.
You did mention the Dover Amendment, and that was something I was contemplating in my own head when reviewing this. So Can you just clarify your statement regarding the Dover Amendment? It might not be applicable at this time?
Well, the zoning bylaw cannot unreasonably regulate the use of property for educational purposes. Now, I'm not arguing that pickleball by the public at large is an educational purpose, but I am saying that were the schools to adopt pickleball as a physical education component of this curriculum, that it could be conducted on the property under the exemption of the Dover Amendment.
Thank
So
you.
I just give you that for purposes of total context.
It's appreciated, thank you.
Got one question.
Sure.
Mr. Duffy, if you know, when are the tennis and basketball courts constructed on that property?
When?
Yes, approximately when?
You mean originally?
Yes.
Oh, well, that used to be the high school. And I understand that the courts were further down towards the pond originally. I know in my years in Falmouth, and I've been here since 1972, they were originally down there, but they've been in their present location since what, like 2018?
Probably mid-90s,
Excuse me, right. They were moved to their present location in the mid-90s, but they were totally resurfaced with CPC funds in 2018. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Duffy. Anyone else for Attorney Duffy?
Yeah, Mr. Duffy, on the, you mentioned that there was a request for funds that the, I guess applicants asked to be turned down. What was the amount of the requested funds, do you know?
$50,000.
And that was for the sound mitigation on these
That was
courts?
for sound mitigation for the Lawrence School pickleball courts. And the mitigation, the sound barriers would have been placed along the exterior fence of the courts as on the fence nearest to the homes.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you, Attorney Duffy.
Okay.
Does anyone have any questions? Sorry, we'll circle back to the applicant
Okay.
then. Does anyone have any questions for the applicant?
Yes, I do.
Jared?
For the noise consultant, could you tell me how is pickleball noise distinct from tennis ball? The neighbors aren't complaining about the tennis ball.
Yeah, so I can't say with a lot of specificity because tennis noise was not part of the scope of the project. So we did measure some tennis noise on the premises, but it probably was not the highest level of tennis noise that occurs. Pickleball noise generally has a different, it's different frequency components than tennis noise. So the sound is different. Those octave bands where the energy is concentrated from that earlier graph, the sound distribution is going to be different. Yeah, that's
Thank you.
about all.
Follow-up, how effective do you think sound attenuation, I think there were going to be nets placed along the fence, or three sides of the fence.
This might come as no surprise, but my professional opinion is that attenuation like that should always be studied in a noise study before being implemented. It is very possible it could improve the situation. So in one of the graphs I showed, we showed excesses above 10 dB and then fewer excesses above 15 dB. It's pretty reasonable you could get 5 dB of reduction at some locations.
Have you checked in with DEP as to the method and duration of your sound study as it may apply to their policy? I know it's not a regulation, but it's been cited as one of the things of concern. Do you have anything from them to say what you did was fair, reasonable, okay? How you did it? Sound measuring devices?
So we followed, general standards, but no, we have not been in contact with DEP. My understanding is that's been tricky with projects in the past, but we haven't reached out to them.
Paul, you have anything?
Yeah, so you mentioned tennis. So why didn't you do a comparison study since tennis would be the only other use on the courts?
Well, we were limited from the scope of the project to 1 day, so we didn't have the money to deploy a noise monitor for a week.
Okay, so the study was just done for 1 day, and what day of the week was that?
It was a Saturday.
So in your professional opinion, because the courts are used for tennis, wouldn't you normally suggest for a comparison that you do a longer study on tennis?
It would be a worthwhile study to do as well. We wanted to document compliance with the Mass DEP criteria, and that was the scope of our study.
And on the day of the week, also what month was that?
I don't recall, but it's in the report.
And then my only other question, and it may be for Attorney Delmas, on the video that you showed on the screen, Palmieri, when was that video taken?
Probably in the spring.
Just for an estimate, and the leaves wouldn't have been out of the trees yet, correct?
What was that?
The leaves on the trees, there wouldn't have been leaves on the trees at that point?
Well, there were leaves, yeah, not full summer type.
That's the only question.
I have one more, please.
I just want to, Scott, did you have anything at all?
No, I think that Bob clarified everything, that it was a Saturday, it was just the one day, and I also had questions about the background status for measuring ambient, I thought would have been measured for a tennis court kind of sound basis, but I understand you only had the one day. Okay.
Yeah, it's certainly a reasonable approach, but there are many ways to approach these things.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Scott?
Is the gear used in the two sports that they're referencing similar? Or are the
You mean-
balls of different construction and the rackets of different construction?
Or tennis and pickleball?
Correct.
Yes, very different.
And how, can you speak to that?
Yeah, so a tennis racket will be a racket with strings bound, so there's some more flexibility in the racket. The ball is more flexible as well. With a pickleball racket, it's solid, and then you have more wiffle ball style ball. So it's a stiffer interaction, which leads to higher frequency and what seems to be higher noise.
Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anything else from the board?
Follow-up question? Oh, I'm sorry, Jim.
Go ahead.
No,
Jerry.
go ahead.
Counselor, did any of your clients purchase the homes previous to the relocation of these courts?
With my understanding, you mean the GIS image that I showed?
Sorry, if you could get, sorry, if you could speak into the microphone. Thank you.
So the map GIS images that I took, the first one where the court was further back, that was from the 1990s GIS, the state GIS site. And then the second one where it showed the court had shifted, it must have been 2000 or after when that shift occurred originally. I mean, pickleball was added, obviously, and
I'm not so much concerned with the pickleball courts. Just my question is, did your clients know they were purchasing a property next to a basketball court or a tennis court?
well, I think they can answer that. They're shaking their heads, yes.
Been here for a long time.
Thank you.
Anything else from the board?
Yes,
Sorry, Jerry.
for the noise expert.
Yep.
You had said the purpose of the study was to demonstrate violation or compliance with the DEP policy. Yet, you didn't submit anything to say the study and the instruments that were used are consistent with what they would require. I'm assuming that a one-day study is not definitive for anything.
It depends on the circumstances. So oftentimes for, say, new construction of a solar site, we would place a meter out unattended for a full week-long period. When we were discussing this project, we decided that unattended measurements would not be very useful to us, and what we needed to do was be on site for most of the time to observe what was going on the courts, and that's what limited the time duration of the study. Also, it's just we need to establish what the background level is for when the sounds are happening. We wanted to show whether there were peaks above 10 dB. And we observed those in great excess of 10 dB on that day of the study.
I understand what you're saying. I just want to get back to your assertion that you did demonstrate a policy violation. In your opinion, you demonstrated some noise variances or sound variances, but you didn't consult with anybody from DEP or anything else to say, this would be acceptable to them to take an enforcement action.
Yeah, I guess our professional stance would be that we're providing the quantitative data that can be used to make that determination.
Okay.
But we don't work on the legal side.
I think Scott has one more question.
For the attorney, please. Given the discussion through testimony of the length of time ownership has taken place, have there been, to your knowledge, any other complaints for any other activity while the homeowners have had that, given the other activities on those spaces?
No, to the best of my knowledge, my clients and the supportive group that signed the petition, they're accustomed to the historical basketball and tennis at the courts, and also the sporadic, the road race, the marathon, the sporting events that occur.
So to your knowledge, for the record, there's been no other complaints prior to this accusation of egregious noise?
Of egregious noise from the courts?
Correct.
I'm not aware with respect to my clients, of any specific complaints,
Thank you.
no.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I just have one follow-up. And this goes back to the town meeting funding. So were your client specifically spoke to remove the requested funding for mitigation at town meeting? If so, who spoke to that and what was the reasoning for it?
Thank you. So Mr. Galasso and Mr. Mastroianni were at the town meeting. And the concern that we have regarding the sound curtains stems from their having gone to other locations, including Mashpee. They're having talked to residences, I think the two closest residences. In fact, I think the closest there is 165 feet. So we're dealing with a very different scenario where sound curtains were put in place. And interestingly, those residents seem to indicate that the noise is still quite prevalent at their homes, notwithstanding the sound curtains. Also, in my discussions with noise control regarding sound curtains, it's best practice to first do a proper acoustical study before you spend $50,000 on something that may not have may not be a solution for the sound violation. So that was the position that we took, and why they attended the town meeting and voted against it. But there was I listened to the town meeting. There were a number of other residents of the town who spoke against it on other entirely separate basis.
But in this situation, so your sound expert said that, in his opinion, sound mitigation may have a positive impact.
Well,
Is what was his testimony tonight. So I guess my question would be, if there's a chance for a positive impact,
right.
why would an applicant speak against the requested funding, since if the requested funding is approved in there, it could help their situation? I guess I'm a little confused on why you would do that.
I think
Instead of saying, I'm in favor of them trying to do something, let's see, what kind of benefits it has, and if it doesn't have benefits, I can understand going forward, but.
I think the sentiment is that the courts are just far too close to residences in this situation, and sound curtains are not going to. We don't believe that sound curtains are going to solve the problem. That's our conclusion, and $50,000 is a lot of money to throw at something, particularly without having done studies in advance to determine that it's actually really going to work.
Other than, excuse me,
Yeah.
other than, in your opinion, the sound curtains, does the subject matter expert have any experience with sound curtains, whether they should be higher, thicker, different material? I mean, I'm trying to think how you would engineer soundproofing, if at all possible. If you did additional study and you had 2 or 3 weeks worth of data and ambient noise data, how would that impact soundproofing?
I think also mention John's second story.
So the level of the excess is really important in this. So you get sound attenuation from the thickness of the barrier. You also get sound attenuation from the height of the barrier. So at a certain point, the sound will bend around the barrier, it'll diffract over the barrier. And what that means is that you're often limited with barriers to 8 to 10 dB at most, regardless of how solid and thick the barrier is. And then the thinner the material, sometimes the sound passing through it can be significant as well. So we would certainly see some improvement, particularly in the lower level impacts that we've measured, because all of the impacts would probably go down in their overall level. Would all of them reduce below 10 dB above the ambient? From what we've seen, very likely not. The other issue at concern is there are complaints on second-story levels, and a barrier, the first rule of thumb is you need to block the line of sight between the sound and the receiving points. you would have to make a pretty tall barrier to be able to block the sound at second-story windows. I know that's not the whole problem, but it's something else to consider.
Thank you.
So that does it for the board for
One
now?
more, the town expert, the gentleman with Frank, I'm sorry, I didn't know you.
Recreation Director.
Yeah, Recreation Director. I'm sorry, I'll make this fast.
Good evening, Joe Alanick, Recreation Director.
Nice, yeah, nice to meet you. We're talking about $50,000 to mitigate sound. What would the cost be to move this court to another area of that park?
Extraordinary. Right now, we're looking at redoing courts in North Falmouth, just rehabilitating them for a basketball court, 4 pickleball courts, and 2 tennis courts. It's almost $600,000.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Jim.
Question, Mr. Lynn? So when you looked at the potential cost expenditure of $50,000, was there no dollars allocated for additional sound studies in that?
There was not, but the $50,000 was enough to cover, to make sure we had enough to do what we needed to do. One of the proposals I had would have been about $37,000, which would have included the acoustic fence, sound curtains, plus supportive fencing for storms, if we have more like we just had. That would help the fence stay up with the barriers there.
Thank you very much.
And they are rated 10 to 12 decibels to drop.
Thank you.
Right. Anything else from the board right now? Nope. All right, so we will turn it over to public comment. I'll just preface my statements. It's been a very long time since we've had this many people in this room. We were meeting on Zoom for 18 months, and before that, it had been quite some time before there had been this much interest generated in an application before this board. So just to go over the ground rules again, public comment, wait to be recognized by me. Please go to the podium, state your name, address for the record, and I suspect many people are gonna try to speak, so right off the bat, just say if you're in favor, opposed, or if you just have questions about this application, and we will give you your 2 minutes to speak on this issue. As a reminder, we do limit public comment in the event that comments do become repetitive. It's already getting pretty late in the evening, so I'm just being cognizant of that with additional applications on our agenda tonight. So with that having been said, is there anyone wishing to speak on this application tonight? Sir, you're up first. Yep, go right ahead, please.
Hello, good evening, folks. My name is Dustin Fouth. I live at 53 Lakeview Avenue, directly across the woods from the pickleball courts. I'm a 4th grade teacher, East Falmouth. For the last year, we have been greatly struggling with the sound of pickleball noise. It is very difficult to sit outside and enjoy our summer days, our evenings, our mornings after 9 with the constant percussive pop, pop, pop that just doesn't stop. I've never had a complaint about noise in my life. I really didn't know much about pickleball before this happened, and we had no knowledge that these courts were going to be placed here in the first place. After hearing it for a couple days, the stress that it caused me and seeing what it did to my neighbors that live even closer was really just appalling and difficult. With the idea that for the rest of our lives, as long as we live on Falmouth or Lakeview Avenue, our summer days, our fall days, even in the winter now, it's still happening, that all those days will be filled up with the pop, pop, pop of pickleball in our private space is really hard to swallow, and enough to make me already start deciding how are we going to move out of this location. Cannot simply bear living with this for years and years, especially after a day in a 4th grade classroom with the noise that I go through on a daily basis, and then come home and want to relax in my backyard and not be able to. We have nothing against pickleball. Pickleball is an awesome sport. I play it. It's quite fun. It's great health. It's great social sport for everybody. I believe the only solution is to relocate the pickleball courts to a place where it will not invade homeowners and people around, and also provide pickleball players with a place where they can go and not feel like they are disturbing the neighbors around them, and they can enjoy their sport, which they should, because it is a very fantastic sport. Our hope is that this will please stop and give us our peace in our backyards, inside our homes. It goes through our windows, it goes through our walls, it's all over. None of us are angry at pickleball players. It's just very difficult to live with this daily. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you. And I had you right at about 2 minutes, so thank you for that. No, I had you right at the 2-minute mark, so thank you for that.
He's a teacher, yeah, that's why he's a teacher.
All right, anyone else wish to speak to this tonight? Ma'am?
My name is Sandra Cuny. I'm chairman of the Falmouth Recreation Committee. I just wanted to let people know that these courts were in very dire need of repair, so they weren't used much in the last few years. And when the application came to the CPC, it was vented publicly that the intent was to redo the tennis courts and add pickleball courts because we'd been under pressure from the hundreds of people that play pickleball. And we had redone the West Falmouth courts, and they came out beautiful. We put new tennis courts with pickleball courts, and people have loved it. So this was the second court that needed fixing in the center of town, good location, and hundreds of people have enjoyed it. We have, the Recreation Committee and the director, we have tried to work with them. Every other, facility is dawn to dusk. So we said, okay, yes, let's start at 9 in the morning. That's a reasonable time. The pickleball players weren't happy because they want to play at 8. But we put signs from 9 to 7, and then we limited the days that they play. So I think that we have done everything. And then when we wanted to do the sound padding, some town meeting members, number one, felt it was recreation by right, and why should we spend $50,000 to do it? And then the neighbors got up to say, yeah, well, they agree. It's a waste of money because that's not going to make them happy. So I am sorry that we're in the situation we're in, but I am an avid recreation person. Those courts are wonderful. The article went through town meeting, it passed, and it wasn't until the new courts were up and running after we spent $250,000 that we even heard our first complaint, that they didn't know anything about it, but it was 2 years publicly announced that this is what was gonna happen. So thank you.
Ma'am, Scott does have a question for you. So.
Were there any sound studies done prior to the allocation of that money and the installation of that pickleball court?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, anyone else?
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Michael Galasso. I live at 107 Lakeview Ave. Our family's been there since 1961. My father didn't want to buy that house, but it was all that we could afford at the time. And in 1961, the fields were all the baseball courts and everything weren't even there. Francisco Tavares started that probably in 63 or 64. So there've been a lot of changes there over the years. There wasn't a road race back then, there wasn't a marathon, and we have never complained about anything occurring at that school since 1961, never. We've put up with a lot of changes. We've cooperated and worked with Scott Gelfi, with the Road Race Committee, and so, we've been very cooperative with what happened there. So in my real life, I'm an affordable housing developer, and one of the first things that I do before I start any projects is I talk to the neighbors, and make sure that they're aboard on what we're going to do. Here, there was no communication with the neighbors. If we would have met, we would have maybe said, move the court back down closer to the school. That might have solved this issue, but they didn't. We had no communication. Now, saying that we weren't following the town meeting warrant articles, we weren't following the rec committee agenda, I think that's a lot to ask of anyone. We're right next door. They could have come and knocked on our door, send us a notice, we would have participated in some discussions, and maybe we wouldn't be here tonight. I think we're trying to undo something that should have been done correctly the first time, unfortunately. And I think the answer is not to have any pickleball at our school, at the Lawrence School. We should have a plan for where we want to put pickleball courts in our town, not spread them out throughout the community. There's plenty of land available at the high school that could be used for court. But we don't have a plan. We're just putting them wherever we can, and we're not working with the neighbors. So I would suggest and hope that you agree with our suggestion to overturn the building commissioner's report, and that you allow the cease and desist order, and that we find other locations for pickleball courts in our community that will serve the whole community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to this tonight?
I was not going to do this. Maria Muniz, Falmouth. Do I have to take this off?
Whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay.
As long as you speak into the microphone, we're good.
And
Okay.
Maria, just for the record, what was your address?
14 Ludlam Street.
Okay, thank you.
I feel like we weren't, us pickleball players, of whom there are more in this room, I think, than the opposition, but I know you don't want to feel that way, but anyway, we do kind of feel that way. It's those 3 days that we get to play. We only get to play from 3 till 5 on the Monday and the Wednesday because school is on, and I was told we can't even use the pickleball court on the days of school. So all we have, and all you people are bothered by, is the Saturday and Wednesday and Monday from 3 till 5, and it gets dark at 4. So please, don't cease and desist these few hours that we get to use that wonderful new court and those other courts. We can't even play on the just for pickleball court on other hours, school hours. So it's up to you.
Anyone else? Sir?
John Churchill, 75 Lakeview. I have only been on my deck twice in the last year. I used to be on it twice a day. She said she was not correct. They're on that small pickleball court every afternoon from 4 o'clock till dark. That's 7 days a week, plus what they get in the morning. So we're constantly hearing it. A lot of things have been said that I don't think were accurate. I live there, I hear it all. It's unbearable. So when they say it's only 3 days a week, that's not true. It's 7 days a week.
Okay, anyone else? Someone's got their hand raised back there, yep.
Hi, my name is Dottie Pender. I live at 34 Whittier Road in East Falmouth. And I started a petition around for pickleball players to try to relocate the area because the surrounding towns like Mashpee, I've gone to Mashpee to play pickleball. They've got beautiful courts. I've gone to Sandwich, they have a nice court. And I've heard that Dennis and Yarmouth have really nice courts. And I guess my question is, why can't Falmouth have a nice court that's not in a neighborhood? I truly understand these people. Pickleball is a loud sport, and I think they've got every right what they're saying. But I think we have a right, as taxpayers to have a place of recreation and play outside. Outside is safer, it's better with COVID, and it's a family. It's not just for older people, and it's for, young people are doing it also. So I did get 236 names of people that wanted to relocate a place. I don't know where, but I know that, we have 44 square miles in Falmouth. Surely there's got to be some place. And also, if you're willing to spend $50,000 on something that you're not sure is going to work, why couldn't you put that $50,000 towards, the 120 or whatever? It just, to me, that makes sense, and people would be happy. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Susan Kelleher, and I'm a real estate agent. And I was asked by Mr. Churchill to come over and look at his property and give him my opinion of the impact of the noise and on the possibility of him selling his property. And what I told him was that when buyers are out shopping and looking for real estate, their job is to eliminate houses by objections. And so sometimes when they're shopping, they look at a house and they might hear road noise, and that might be an objection. And sometimes it might be this subject and of noise by the playground. So what is important to buyers, in addition to the house, is the yard and having a place to go to enjoy their family outside, maybe eating outside or having conversation. And it seems clear to me that, from what Mr. Churchill told me, is that he hasn't been able to do that. And that may have an impact on the value of his home if he decides to sell it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else out there? All right, not seeing anyone, so we'll go back to the board. Anyone have any follow-up questions for the applicant or anyone out there?
Mr. Chairman, could I ask a question of Mr. Olenek, please?
Of course you can.
Mr. Olenek, we've heard, I guess, conflicting accounts of what are the hours for the pickleball court. So could you clarify that if you know off the top of your head?
The hours for the court, the single court, the dedicated court is open 7 days a week, 9 to dusk, or 9 to 7 or dusk, whichever comes first.
No, that wasn't true.
Excuse me. Mr. Olenek speaking, we're going to let him.
That is true. This dedicated court at the Lawrence School is open 9 to 7 or dusk, whichever comes first. The tennis court part is open for tennis 9 to 7 or dusk, and the pickleball court is open to 9 to dusk or see, now I'm getting all confused. Start from the beginning. Sunday, tennis is 9 to dusk. Monday, pickleball is 9 to 7 or dusk, whichever comes first. Tuesday is tennis, 9 to dusk. Wednesday is pickleball, 9 to 7 or dusk, whichever comes first. Thursday is tennis, 9 to dusk. Friday is tennis, 9 to dusk. Saturday is pickleball, 9 to 7 or dusk, whichever comes first. And the single dedicated court is open 7 days a week, 9 to 7 or dusk, whichever comes first.
One more clarifier.
Sure.
What happens during the school year?
During the school year, in a conversation I had with the principal, if the school was not using the courts, people were welcome to use the courts from the scheduled time of 9, depending on whichever sport they were playing. He had no objection to that. But the school has put up a sign to let everybody know if they're going to be using the court that day, then they can drive by, they can see that the school's going to be using it, and they can move on to either North Falmouth or Swift Park.
Thank you very much.
And just so everybody knows, we are working on the North Falmouth courts. We just received more money to try to rebid the project, which will give us 4 dedicated pickleball courts and 2 dedicated tennis courts. And we are actively looking for a nice dedicated pickleball spot, which is very difficult to locate in the town. We have zeroed in on a couple of sites that hopefully, the next, 4 or 6 months, we'll have a better idea of what we can do with those courts, with that spot.
Thank you very much.
Any other board members?
I guess just for Attorney Delmas, so you're not asking at all to curtail any other usage, tennis usage, just pickleball usage?
It's just pickleball.
That's one question I had, thank you.
And again, it's a cease and desist and a transfer essentially over to the planning board to do what should have been done, given it being an expansion of use, to take a look at this probatively and also to look at the mitigation element. but at least to give my clients relief, in the interim, because the play is continuing, as far as I understand.
Thank you.
Right, has the board heard everything that needs to be heard tonight?
Yes.
Would anyone like to make a motion to close the hearing then?
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion made by Scott to close the hearing, second by James. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so hearing is closed. No more testimony may be taken. For discussion?
I'll fire off.
Sounds good.
Sometimes we forget, we hear phrases like the overall good, this, that, and we hear it about housing, and we hear, this is a recreational activity, and we're talking about a nuisance that affects people and their day-to-day life. And we have to ask ourselves, what is a nuisance? You have to put yourself in that position of the people. So I don't count the greater good in an instance like this. There are other places in this town that could take place. We have to stand with the aggrieved abutters as well as the greater good. I'm a little tired of hearing of that. So that's my opinion. So I think everybody here knows how I'm going to vote. I don't know how everybody else is going to vote. But you should be able to go home and enjoy your time at home when you're not at work, or you're not in a 4th grade class, or you're not in a factory. You should be able to go out on your porch. We've had complaints about 40Bs. Well, that is the greater good, or that in some cases, that's the argument, and that's the push for it. And in this case, there are other venues to do this. And there's obviously money out there to make this happen somewhere else. So that's where I'm at it.
All right, thank you, Scott. Anyone else want to chime in?
Okay, so I have just some issues with some of the information. So I understand the sound study. I think it's very hard to base something on a one-day study, with no comparison with the other recreational activities that are taking place on the same courts. We have to look at what the building commissioner used as a reason for his decision, and was it reasonable or not? Do you have a little bit of an issue that it sounds like the town tried to do something to try to mitigate the issue? And the applicants actually asked to have the monies removed. And the monies that they're talking, the 50,000 they were doing, doesn't have a great effect expense-wise. And their sound experts said it may have a mitigation effort. We've got conflicting information regarding who's using the courts and when. That, I think, it would be more of an issue of, how do you lock the courts and check the courts, and how do you manage the courts? Mr. Duffy brought up Dover. And I know we didn't go into that in depth, but, from what I know about Dover, I think that would have an effect on this.
There was also an if, though. They're not doing that now, Bob.
I don't, he didn't go into what his reasoning was for. I think Dover protects recreational activities on its school grounds.
But pickleball isn't an accredited sport at that facility right now.
Yeah, but we have no testimony from the schools what they're using it for.
And you also have no sound study prior to the construction of this.
I think because it's on or next to school grounds. They've had this on other situations, on other areas, and I don't think relocating the court, I just don't think it's viable. I don't think we have enough information. We have to base it on what the building commissioner used for his reason behind it. I'm not saying there isn't noise, and I'm not saying it's bothersome, but I can't base the noise impact on a one-day small period on a Saturday versus midweek on an area that gets, high traffic on, James had mentioned, where the property's ever purchased, while there was activities going on next to a school anyways. And
But there was no pickleball, so tomorrow if they decide we're gonna have a cannon firing class out there, that wasn't part of what they were doing prior to them buying that house, is that gonna be allowed too?
I hate to say it, but if they make a connection to educational, they're protected. You know, you had the situation in Sandwich with Heritage. The zip line, which personally I don't think is connected to it, but they ran under Dover because.
I was with Frank until he said if and when they do that.
Well, I don't know if.
But they don't do it now. It's not an accredited activity at present, therefore it doesn't fall under that act.
I don't think Dover specifies that it's an accredited sport activity.
So if we go back to the minutes when Frank was testifying, that he said if they took this on as a, what was the terminology? Anybody?
Almost like school activity.
Right, but they don't yet. If they did, why wouldn't they?
I mean, if the students used pickleball, if any one student used
they?
pickleball on that court ever, it falls under Dover.
Does one gym teacher take those kids out there yet? Anybody?
Well, we don't know.
Well, if that was that important to the recreation department, you would think that they'd have somebody out there to attest to that. Everybody else is here to attest to what their beliefs are and what their facts are. We just have to be realistic. I mean, there are certain things that if doesn't cover.
I guess the counterbalance to that is that the town recognized that there may be a need for additional sound mitigation, and $50,000 was potentially put on the table to be spent. Whether that was the right path to go forward, clearly we seem not to have the right data as it concerns to, you know, over 2 or 3 months on Saturdays, Mondays, southwest wind blows the noise away, leaves on the trees. So, you know, these sound studies are very detailed, and you need a lot of data, and having a one Saturday just doesn't add up to me.
Or one prior to construction by the town.
Right.
That's true.
Mr. Chairman, I do think that, you know, the sound study sounds nice, but I think it would be, in my opinion, it would be prohibitively expensive to do the type of sound study that would be needed for the town before they enter into a court case. I mean, enter into building. So I think, I don't know if it's a red herring, but a lot of projects go ahead without a sound study, and I don't think we're even close to guessing how much a sound study could be, especially if it's attenuated.
Do we make that the abutter's responsibility?
No.
Financially then?
If I could vote, I'd be with you.
All right, thank you, Jerry. As far as what I'm thinking on this, I tend to agree with town council in upholding the building commissioner's decision. I am sympathetic with the neighbors. I think it's a bit premature for this to rise to the level of a cease and desist order before this board. You heard from Attorney Duffy and other town employees that the building commissioner provided a reasonable response, and this town's certainly identified this as an issue, and they're willing to work with the neighbors in addressing the problems and trying to come to an amicable solution. So that's where I am at. James, anything?
I share a lot of your sentiments. I think deference needs to be given to the determination of the building inspector as well as to the request of town council. I would be swayed I would say, if the sound study, you could have put a day where tennis was being played and a day that pickleball was being played, and it showed a significantly difference in the noise level, so to speak. But at this point, that's kind of where I'm feeling right now, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I would also say that since the resurfacing of these courts, living in West Falmouth, since they were resurfaced there is definitely an increase in use, regardless of whether it's pickleball, tennis, or otherwise. And I think that is also may very well be driving this issue.
James? All right, so we have board discussion. Anything else? Anyone like to make a motion for a vote then? And just to be clear, would be either, well, we'd be voting either uphold or deny. Anyone?
Guys all had positive arguments,
So-
let's go.
So what is the,
Yeah, this is embarrassing.
what are we looking at? We're looking at just a majority vote?
I'll make the motion to sustain the determination of the building inspector to deny the cease and desist.
I'll second that.
All right, so the motion was made by James and second by Scott Peterson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Nay, okay. All right, so there you have it.
So a question for the administrator. Do we have to give any basis for it at all, or no? I'm just asking you, do we, normally when we do these,
I
I mean, do you have to
think
state that it's reasonable response, or-
to identify whatever from the meeting tonight, if you so choose, it makes sense.
All right.
Could I suggest you go back and look, because I thought last time we had this, you said there was no need to explain the decision. But if the board wants to explain it, it's just words get everybody into trouble.
You know, it's a board choice. I mean, obviously, whatever you want to put in is,
The reason cited during our discussion, I think that's fine. Just to be on the safe side, should we have another vote on that? For the reasons cited during our discussion?
I'll make that motion.
All right.
I'll make an amendment to my motion.
Thank you, James. Scott, you want to second that again?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Still opposed.
Thank you, Scott. All right, so that does it, carries 4-1. Probably a good time for us to take about a 5-minute break, let everyone filter out. All right, so we'll take a 5-minute break. we are back. We're gonna pick it up with application 95-21.
Yeah, so, Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I'm gonna make a motion to take an item out of order. So instead of Corbett, we'll be going to application number 97-21, Doonan, 12 Worcester Ave.
Very good.
So moved.
All right, so motion was made by Bob, second by Scott. All those in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. We will be taking application 97-21, Doonan, 12 Worcester Ave in Falmouth, requesting a special permit to remove the existing garage and construct an attached garage with habitable space above, increasing lot coverage by structures.
So application number 97-21, Timothy J. and Jennifer C. Doonan, 12 Worcester Avenue, Falmouth, Mass. It's applied to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit pursuant to sections 240-3C and 240-69E of the Code of Falmouth to remove the existing garage and construct an attached garage with habitable space, increasing lot coverage by structures on subject property known as 12 Worcester Avenue, Falmouth, Mass. For referrals, from Scott McGann, Falmouth Health Department, losing a bedroom and gaining above the garage, so no net increase in bedrooms, so health has no issues with the project as presented. From Engineering Department, the Engineering Department reviewed the following plan of proposed garage prepared for Timothy Doonan, lots 9 and 10, number 12 Worcester Avenue. One sheet dated May 26, 2021, last revised 11/15/21 by Holmes and McGrath, Inc. A plan of erosion control prepared by Timothy Doonan, lots 9 and 10, number 12 Worcester Avenue. One sheet dated November 15, 2021, with no revisions by Holmes and McGrath, Inc. And the application, Town of Falmouth application for driveway permit, application date 11/15/2021. The driveway permit application was reviewed and approved. A bond of $500 was set and is anticipated to be submitted soon. An apron is included on the revised plans. The proposed driveway detail is clear on the revised plans. The drywall for the new roof is shown on the revised plans. An erosion and sediment control plan was included in the revised plans and is acceptable. Our request for the condition requiring compliance stands. Copy of the driveway permit. Conservation Commission voted to issue a negative determination allowing the proposed work to move forward without requiring the filing of a notice of intent. The permit has not yet been issued but can be forwarded to the ZBA as soon as possible. They attached a reference plan. Again, engineering. Application was reviewed for impacts to public rights of way and public utilities. Nantucket Avenue, Montgomery Avenue, and Worcester Avenue are public rights of way in this area. No alterations are proposed to the right of way. There's some notations on the gravel drive, but Noreen, those were all taken care of in the driveway permit, correct?
Yes.
Any connections or alterations to public utilities would require permission from the appropriate town department. Project must not direct any stormwater runoff to public property, abutters, or public rights of way. Mentions about dry wells, but those have already been put on the plan. Mentions erosion and sediment controls, but they put that they already have an approved on the plan. Construction of the project shall follow the town's soil erosion and sediment control standard conditions. Document found on the engineering's division's page of the town's website. References to the Department of Public Works Engineering shall be replaced with the Zoning Board of Appeals, who would be the permitting authority for the project. From Cahal at the Water Department, water line and mains must be shown in the plans. The water gate is correct. The existing home is a 3/4 service fed from a 4-inch main in Nantucket. We recommend the petitioner request a 1-inch tap and service from the 12-inch main in Worcester Avenue to allow for additional flow and pressure demands of the additional habitable space above the garage. The current service is smaller than our current standard of 1 inch, and the main is undersized for the additional demand. Fire department has no issues with the project as drawn. From Planning Board, the property is on the list of significant buildings. However, the garage structure is not a historical structure, so the demo of the garage will not be subject to the demo delay bylaw and will not need to go before the Historical Commission. From Assessor's Department, this includes lots 9 and 10. And then the previous one from Health, it just said the bonus room meets the definition of a bedroom in both Title V and local regulations. The existing septic system has a 5-bedroom capacity, and there appears to be 5 existing bedrooms in the house currently. The bonus would add 6. They've already adjusted for that in his revised. And that's it.
All right, and for the applicant, we have Attorney Clower, and be appointing Jerry as a voting member on this project.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For the record, my name is Kevin Clower. I'm an attorney with Ahmed Clower Law Firm here in Falmouth, and I represent the applicants, Tim and Jennifer Doonan, the owners of 12 Worcester Avenue. Mr. Doonan is here with us this evening. They're seeking permission to alter an existing non-conforming dwelling. This property, 12 Worcester Avenue, is located pretty smack dab in the heart of Falmouth Heights. It's, as you know, a very dense, vibrant neighborhood, largely seasonal in nature. Just recently, this board considered and approved an application at 16 Worcester Avenue, which is directly across Nantucket Avenue from this property. So you should be pretty familiar with the area at this point. 12 Worcester is on a lot of 7,580 square feet, and it's located in the Residential C zoning district. Presently, there's a 4-bedroom, single-family dwelling with a footprint of just over 1,500 square feet. It is non-conforming to front yard setback, being 1.6 feet where 25 is required, and side yard setback to the north being 3.9 feet where 10 is required. The applicants proposed a new attached 2-car garage with habitable space above, located on the eastern side of the property. This habitable space will serve as a private home office for the Doonans as they transition to living in the property full-time and are now working from home on a full-time basis. This proposal will not increase the number of bedrooms, which will remain at 4. An existing bedroom was eliminated in the primary portion of the home. The existing ridge height will remain the same at just under 26 feet 2 inches. The footprint will be expanded, will result in higher lot coverage by structure, which will actually be 25%, therefore requiring a special permit from this board under both 243C and 69E. There's no change to the non-conforming front yard or side yard setbacks, and there's no new non-conformity created. The addition, again, will allow for a private home office and and a 2-car garage, resulting in less clutter on the lot. Under 243C, pre-existing non-conforming structures may be changed by special permit, provided that they're found to be not substantially more detrimental than what exists. The board is asked to consider the standards of 240-216 and whether or not the alteration creates any new dimensional nonconformities, impairs views and vistas, and reasonably conforms to the neighborhood. In this case, there's no new nonconformity created. There's no change to an existing nonconformity, and otherwise many of those requirements mirror those set forth in 69E. Under that section, lot coverage by structure exceeding 20% may be allowed by special permit. And in doing so, the board is supposed to consider the size and height of the structure in relation to the average size and height of structures in the neighborhood, the effect of shadow on adjacent properties, the impact on views and vistas from public ways, and the effect of nitrogen on coastal embayments. Here, we have no impact to views and vistas from public ways. There should be no change to shadow. It's a dense neighborhood, and the ridgeline will remain the same. This property actually runs west to east from Worcester Ave to Montgomery Ave as well. There's no effect of nitrogen on coastal embayments, and as there's the same number of bedrooms. As to the size and height, we did submit a lot comparison worksheet. As we know, the height is very dense. Many, if not most, of the nearby properties exceed the lot coverage requirements. Of the 47 properties we looked at within the 300-foot radius, 34 had lot coverage above 20%, 25 had lot coverage above 25%. 14 of them had larger footprints, and 12 had higher gross floor areas. The applicant's proposal is certainly below most in terms of lot coverage, and very similar as to footprint and gross building area. This project, as proposed, represents a significant improvement for the applicants, again allowing indoor parking and the creation of a useful office space, as well as an improvement to their existing living area. It will not create any new dimensional nonconformities, will not have any adverse effects that overbalance its beneficial effects, and it's in character with the surrounding properties in size and in scope. I believe that it meets the requirements of 243C, 240-69E, and 240-216. For those reasons, I believe the board can and should grant a special permit, and I'll be happy to address any questions that you might have at this time.
right, thank you, Attorney Clark. On to board questions. Jerry, you want to start us off?
I have no questions at this time.
All right, James.
No questions, thank you.
Scott?
Attorney Clower,
Yes.
this is one of the bigger lots out in that area,
It's actually smaller than the lot we just looked at across the street.
but the way it's laid out makes it prime for this application.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
I would agree, absolutely. I think you don't see a lot of long and narrow lots where laying out a property like this, a garage like this makes a lot of sense. Having frontage on 3 roads also helps quite a bit as well.
There's plenty of room for everything. All right, I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Bob?
So I just have one question, it might just be an error. So on the FEMA worksheet that you put in,
Mm-hmm.
it says that the cost of the project is 106,165, but the structure is valued at 122,950?
I don't have the...
It's not signed or anything, but it's
Sure.
filled out?
I mean, we're gonna, so Mr. Doonan actually submitted that, that's prepared by Mr. Doonan with the assistance of a friend who's a contractor. We're gonna have to submit the FEMA worksheet to the building department and comply with whatever their requirements are. I have to think that the structure here is worth more than 106, maybe that's half the value.
Well, 106 is the work, it says the structure is 122,950, which also I think is crazy. It's just that
I can-
that's what's submitted in the file.
Sure,
just
I
so-
can check the, if you bear with me for 1 second.
Yeah, if you can just pull up the assessment on the structure.
Did we get that from the assessor's office, I thought?
Yeah,
Oh,
but I
we
want to
didn't?
see what his figure is, because I don't want to, 165.
There might be a property card in the
Two-
file.
That's what I
So
meant.
212, 330.
Property card in the front there, Bob?
That can't be right.
Let's see if I can get on here.
Yeah, the total assessed is 846.5. What's the breakdown? Yeah, you should be fine. We'll just make a note that,
I'm looking at,
yeah, 790,
It's gotta
you're
be
fine.
listed.
We'll just make a note that there's an error on the sheet in the file, and that you'll comply with the,
yeah, they have this at 245, so the building value at 245, so half of that's 122 change.
yeah, I think that's where the mistake came in.
Yeah, I think they just listed the...
They put the change as the
allowance.
total.
They put the allowance as the total.
Yeah. Nope, that's the only question I have.
All right, Scott?
No comment.
Attorney Clower, the habitable space being proposed, the bonus room, half bath being proposed up there?
Yeah, it's to be used as a home office.
All right, and no kitchen, no cooking
Nope.
facilities? Very good. All right, that does it for me. Anyone else? All
No.
right, members of the public, any questions, comments, concerns regarding this project? Seeing none,
Close, sir.
to the board.
Second.
Motion closed made by Scott, second by James. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hearing is closed. No more testimony may be taken.
Motion to approve with conditions?
Second.
Motion approved with conditions made by Bob. I'll give the second to Scott. Findings?
240,
Oh, yeah. we'll give it to Scott.
240-3C, 240-69E, 240-216, not substantially more detrimental. It's going to increase utilization of the home. The owner submitted a FEMA worksheet. There was an error on the worksheet, but they should be within the allowable 50% for the improvement without bringing it into compliance. Testimony was that they will be submitting to the building department. Building department will have final say if it meets the FEMA requirements. There's going to be no change to any of the setbacks, no new nonconformity. Ridge height is the same.
Existing garage was in ill repair.
Yeah, in ill repair. The lot coverage is going to be changing from 20.6 to 25%, which is allowed by special permit.
In keeping.
They do have a driveway permit from engineering. They did put dry wells and the changes requested on their plan. Water Department is requesting some revisions on the service per their referral.
No opposition at the hearing, no opposition.
Yep, no opposition in the
Building.
hearing, nothing for or against in the file.
So it's obviously suitable for the project.
Maintaining the same number of bedrooms, right?
Yep. 5 allowed, so we can condition the bedrooms, we can condition the cooking facilities.
Is that all set for fun? Do you want to move on to conditions, or?
Yeah, so on per plans, 5-bedroom, remaining of 5-bedroom. Noreen, what do we do for wording? So this is exactly at 25%. So like with the building, how we ask for a cert, so when would you ask for the cert, the 25, just to make sure it doesn't go over the 25?
At the foundation.
All right, so put that in there, because we've had a lot of these that are going over. Put in the soil erosion and sediment control standards. Put in the water department, increase in service. Let's see, it was. Oh, add to the findings that they went in front of conservation for negative referral.
No as of right sheds, et cetera.
Yep. Actually, no no additional structures at all.
Didn't you and Mr. Clower have language about something that you wanted to add?
That's on another one.
You need work hours?
Yeah, work hours. We'll put in our regular work hours.
No, I mean, on this case, Bob, didn't he say at building they would, the calculations that you would?
Oh, that was on, that's the FEMA, we took care of that.
So where else, it's already?
Yeah, it was just a
Yeah.
common
Alright.
mistake on the application. So dry wells are on the plan, but also condition the dry wells. And they're there. From the water department.
We need anything about parking, given the location?
Yeah, put condition it on changing it to, for the water department, a 1-inch tap and service from a 12-inch main.
We have to move that inside?
He didn't mention it here, but it would have to be moved inside. We can add, if not inside already. They do have to have the water line and mains on the plan. They do have the water gate.
Do we put
Oh,
hours?
put in findings that
Hours, yep.
the building itself is in the historical significant buildings, but the garage is not included in that. The referral says that there should be no issue with the demo of the garage, with the demo delay bylaw. Put in the findings that it does include lot 9 and 10. Condition that the habitable space of the garage can have no cooking facilities. Property must be used as a single family only. That's it.
One question, we do mean the elevation should be the mean ground level elevation. I mean, not, at the foot of the foundation, not the top of the foundation.
Well, what,
Mean grade,
We're not
right?
doing the elevate, we're doing,
yeah, what you
Height
want to
cert?
do just is
We're not doing
look
a height
at your
cert 'cause
lot
it's under.
coverage.
their lot coverage is right at 25%, which is the
Make sure
max,
that
so
it
we're doing
doesn't
it just for
exceed.
lot coverage.
Oh, lot coverage calculation, okay, that's fine, okay.
All right. Does that do it?
And with the lot coverage calculation, do they, I know it gets submitted to the building department, does that automatically get submitted to us at the time it's done?
We can ask for it
Yeah, put that in there. Because if an error comes in, we can fix it then.
and require it prior to final, so that it,
Maybe we should also put in the findings that the applicant is going to the maximum allowed lot coverage by special permit of 25%, and anything greater would not be allowed.
All right. Anything else?
Yeah, they didn't do the numbers, so yeah, I think that's okay.
All right, so if that does it, that was a motion to approve with conditions made by Bob and second by Scott. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, passes unanimously. Thank you, Attorney Clower.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
And then from here, we're circling back to Corbett.
Actually, we're going right to, no, we're gonna go to Cross.
Oh, sorry. All right. Application 96-21, Cross, 428 Blacksmith Shop Road in East Falmouth, requesting a special permit to construct a detached accessory apartment in the front yard, more than 50 feet from the front property line.
So application number 96-21, Donald E. Cross II and Francis M. Cross, P.O. Box 1090, West Falmouth, Mass. Apply to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit pursuant to Sections 240-38I and 240-68A8 of the Code of Falmouth to construct a detached accessory apartment in the front yard, more than 50 feet from front property line on subject property known as 428 Blacksmith Shop Road, West Falmouth. We do have a decision in the file of approval from the planning board with their conditions. Conservation Department, the proposed activities appear to be located outside of any conservation jurisdiction. From engineering, the application was reviewed for impacts to public rights-of-way and public utilities. Blacksmith Shop Road is a public right-of-way in this area. No alterations are proposed to the right-of-way. Any changes within the right-of-way would require filing a permit with the engineering division. Any connections or alterations to public utilities would require permission from the appropriate town departments. The project does not direct any stormwater runoff to public property, abutters, or public rights-of-way. We recommend that the board add a condition that requires the addition of dry wells for stormwater infiltration measures for the new roof area at a minimum. Where the proposed accessory apartment is in the front yard, which requires a special permit, the board may want to request a revision to the plans showing a demarcation of limit of clearing. The new structure will require an address assignment per the town's address policy. The accessory apartment would be 428 Blacksmith Shop Road, Apartment A. The original home will remain 428 Blacksmith Shop Road. Engineering will assign the address prior to sign-off on the building permit. We would include subsection 99(1). Upon completion of construction, the applicant shall post the address for this residence, affixing of legible numbers required, time limit for compliance. Health Department, health has no issues with the project. There is sufficient lot size and does not trigger the denitrifying septic system requirement in the accessory apartment bylaw. Fire Department has no issues with the project as drawn. Planning mentioned that it was before them, but they've already finished the planning process. Assessors Department, the assessors do request a full inspection at completion of the project. From Kahal at the Water Department, the water service and main are on the plans. The existing home has a 1-inch service fed from a 12-inch main in Blacksmith Shop Road. The new home will need a 1-inch service tapped into the 12-inch main as well, per the plans. The existing home's water meter is inside. The new home will also require a meter to be inside. We have a couple of letters. I'll just read them in quickly. Most of these were to the planning board because they're the start of the project, but, dear members, the purpose of this correspondence is to confirm that Francis and Donald Cross have discussed with us their application for a detached accessory structure at their home at 428 Blacksmith Shop Road. We have reviewed the site plan, and the architectural plans are in support of their project. That is Zhang Bak and Boatyard Co., and they are at 444 Blacksmith Shop Road. This is from Maria Hickey. I currently reside at 432 Blacksmith Shop Road and have lived here since October of 1990. My house is set over 1,000 feet back from the road on a heavily wooded parcel. I fully support the application of Fran and Donnie Cross seeking permission to site a second detached building within the same location of their house and my driveway. Fran and Donnie Cross have been exemplary neighbors for over 29 years. I cannot see their house from my house, even in the winter when the trees are defoliated. It would be undesirable to me to have the new building located in their backyard, as then it would be visible to me. This is from Patricia and Gerald Martin. Writing in regards to Donnie and Fran Cross that live at 428 Blacksmith Shop Road, East Falmouth. I've reviewed their plans for an additional home to be built at the above address. The accessory structure is well off the street and mostly obstructed by mature trees and landscaping. My husband Gerald Martin and I reside at 412 Blacksmith Shop Road. We have no issues with Donnie and Fran Cross moving forward with their plans on their property. We feel the new plans to build will be a nice addition to their property and will not be a detriment to the neighborhood. And finally, from Angela Rose at 420 Blacksmith Shop Road. I, Angela Rose at 420 Blacksmith Shop Road, have reviewed the construction plans at 428 Blacksmith Shop Road, which is the Cross property. It is set back from the road and will be obstructed by existing mature plants and trees. There is no issue as an abutter with Donnie and Fran Cross moving forward with the proposed dwelling, and there are no letters in opposition that have been submitted.
All right. This application will be appointing Scott as a voting member. And for the applicant?
Hi, I'm Frances Cross. I live at 428 Blacksmith Shop Road. And I have not prepared really anything like that attorney, so I'm kind of going by the seat of my pants.
So you're in better shape.
Could be a good thing. That's a good thing. It's not.
So everything is up here, so hopefully I'll be able to answer any of your questions.
So do you just want to turn it over to board questions then, or?
Yeah, I do have one note, the engineering. The line of demarcation, I sort of drew up a very rough plan. I think it's in the packet there. And let me see if I can find it on here.
If not, we can just make it part of the plan, and then as long as they see it and it shows it's demarcated, that's really all they need.
Yeah, hang on one second. Aerial view. All right. So if you look at our plan there, you see the green section out in front of our yard. That is all town property. That's where the road was moved over
Okay.
many years ago. Our property starts, that's my very rough drawing there, but that's basically an amateur drawing of my property, and the yellow rectangle is where the accessory will be. We are planning on holding on to, there's a stand of trees in the front yard. We're gonna hold on to most of those trees, but we're gonna take down trees around the house. We have to clear for where we're building. We lost 6 trees in this past storm, so it kind of highlighted to us how dangerous they can be. So we're gonna clear out enough around the house to make it safe. And we are also gonna put in solar panels. So that was part of the reason why we're putting the house kind of so far forward, because we don't want to be in the shadow of the main house. So we want them both to face south for maximum sun. So that's basically my spiel on why we're looking for this special permit to be in the front yard.
All right, sure, Scott.
Mrs. Cross, this is for family members?
Yes, my daughter and her family, she's a nurse here in Falmouth. They live in Falmouth. They have, herself and her husband have 2 children, both in daycare. And they rent a property, an apartment in Falmouth, and they pay $2,300 a month. Between daycare and their rent, it's killing them. They're trying to save for a house, but they really, it's hard. So we have 2 acres, and we thought, why not? We have the space, and if we can help our kids.
You sit back pretty far off the road as well.
We
right?
are,
You're
yeah.
finding-
Well, we're bringing it 50 feet back from our lot line, but then there's another, however, that I'm not sure.
The topography drops off in the back of your yard?
Gently.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a steep drop, but right in the back, we're putting the septic system, so there's kind of a natural, just a gentle slope.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. James, anything?
Property was not gonna be used, will not be used for an Airbnb in the future
no.
after?
No.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, Jerry?
No questions.
Paul?
It's just a single level ranch, correct?
The new place will be the.
And just for clarification, on that demarcation line, did you say you drew it into one of these plans, or?
No, I talked to John Doyle. He, I actually called engineering for a little bit of clarification on what we should do.
They can just add it later. They can just add it later.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. what
Just
they-
basically a line saying that you're not doing work past such a point.
Okay,
It's
so
more-
yeah, so we'll go, there are big trees right at the front of the property that may have to come down. I talked to an arborist, and we haven't made that. I'm gonna try and save as many trees as I can, but we're taking down anything that's not safe, or that may be compromised.
And what's the square footage?
Of the new?
Yeah.
800.
800. And it's a 1-bedroom, correct?
Yeah.
And it's served by its own septic as well, right?
Yeah, we're putting, yeah.
Good. That's it for me.
Scott, anything?
Oh, I thought the letter was very compelling. The accessory structure makes an awful lot of sense here when you have a 80,000 square foot lot. It's great that you can age in place, so I think it's a good application.
Sounds good. Thank you, Scott. And obviously, you're year-round resident, so you satisfy the 7-month minimum in the bylaw?
Yes, yeah.
Fantastic. All right, that's all I have. Anything else from the board? Okay. Members of the public, any questions, comments, or concerns regarding this project? Not
To
seeing
close.
any.
Second.
All right, motion to close made by Scott and seconded by James. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hearing is closed. No more testimony may be taken.
Motion to
Motion to
approve.
approve with
Oh,
conditions?
I'll second it.
All right, so give that one to Bob, seconded by Scott. Findings?
So we'll put that, this meets the intent of the accessory apartment bylaw. The unit itself is 800 square feet, one-bedroom unit, and is planned to be used by immediate family. At this point, it's not planned to be used as a rental. If ever used as a rental, it would have to comply with the rental restrictions of the bylaw, and you can post those. Testimony of the applicant, it is a large lot. It's secluded by trees. There will need to be some tree removal, but applicant has got, try to save as many as possible within safety sake. The project is in the front yard, but it's being sited for solar panels.
No negative referrals.
No, and it's actually, the immediate neighbors have all written in support.
Water.
You could also mention the one that says they like the fact that it's sited in the front yard because she would be able to look at it if it was sited in the backyard. Testimony was that they did not have a demarcated work line, but that's something that could be added prior to construction and just okayed with engineering. Property will have dry wells. I'd add in there that it's an attractive design. Yeah. You see some ugly ones sometimes.
Design standards.
In my opinion.
Design standards are part of the
I know.
bylaw, Bob. All right.
So it fits within the area.
Anything else for findings?
Property will have a full basement for storage only.
Served by its own septic.
Yep.
All right, conditions?
Water line's gotta go inside, 1-inch water line.
Yeah, so then do it per plans. We're gonna have to condition it on. Oh, did we list in the finding the, no, we didn't, 240-38I, and did I say those or no? So in the, so 240-38I, 240-68A8, and 240-216. Not substantially more detrimental. Increases utilization and family use. So we do per plans, and then we'll have to add the conditions of the accessory apartment regulations. Also to include the rental restrictions. Need to make it subject to subsection 99(1), a fixing of legible numbers, time limit for compliance. Also make subject to designation by engineering for the house address, 428 and A.
I think you could put work hours in there, but I wouldn't restrict.
I don't think you need it there, because
Yeah, and
the
restricting,
property's so big.
building supplies to the site, there's plenty of room there, and you can't even,
Put on there that at completion of construction, owner is to allow assessors entrance into the property and into the structure for an inspection. The water service for the accessory apartment will have to be located within the house. Restricted the, no habitable space in the basement.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I'll move that we extend the business of the board 45 minutes.
second
All right, I was gonna make that. We certainly don't have to use the entire 45 minutes, and I was gonna
Certainly
make-
hope not.
All right, so
We
that was
will.
made by James, second by Scott. All those in favor?
Aye.
James, thank you for keeping an eye on the clock. All right.
Can you add into findings that the subject property is located within a Zone 2 overlay of the wildlife corridor? Also put in the findings that Health said it didn't need to meet any special requirements for the septic, just Title V. Don't have to do a height cert, don't have to do dry wells for roof runoff.
I don't think so.
Is that part of the referral?
It's not part of the plan, it wasn't on the referrals.
No, it's actually part of the, I think they just put it there.
But it's been demonstrated by the topography that it'll flow off.
So then we could put in there that engineering department had requested dry wells, but due to the size of property and topography, we're not making that a requirement.
Yeah, that's why I asked the
Yeah.
topography question.
Slopes toward the back.
Anything else?
I think that just about does it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that was a motion to approve with conditions made by Bob, second by Scott. All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
All right,
Now,
now circling back to Corbett. All right. So we have application 95-21 Corbett, 66 Allen Ave in East Falmouth, requesting a special permit to remove the existing detached garage and construct a pool, increasing lot coverage by structures.
okay.
Did I give the last one to Scott?
Yep.
All right.
So application 95-21, John W. Corbett, 139 Allen Avenue, Falmouth, Mass. has applied to the zoning board of appeals for a special permit pursuant to sections 240-3C and 240-69E of the Code of Falmouth to remove the existing detached garage and construct a pool, increasing lot coverage by structures on subject property known as 66 Allen Ave. In engineering, application was reviewed for impacts to public rights-of-way and public utilities. Allen Avenue and Fairview Avenue are public right-of-way in this area. There is an active driveway permit on file with the engineering division for the work shown on the plans. No further action is necessary. Any connections or alterations to public utilities would require permission from the appropriate town departments. The project must not direct any stormwater runoff to public property, abutters, or public right-of-way. The driveway permit plans and the previous building permit plan showed dry wells for the home and the garage. There does not appear to be dry wells on the revised plans. We recommend the board condition the requirement of the addition of dry wells for infiltration measures. We recommend the following condition be included, which is subsection 99.1. Upon completion of construction, the applicant shall post the address of the residence with the fixing of legible numbers, required time limit for compliance. Erosion and sediment controls are part of the driveway permit. These measures should remain until completion. Proposed project appears to be located outside of conservation jurisdiction. Fire department has no issues with the project as drawn. Health has no issues with this project. Planning, no comment. Assessors, no comment. From Cahal, the water department, water main and service are on the plans. The existing home is a 1-inch service fed from a 6-inch main. The existing home does not have a meter pit, so the meter is already inside. There's one letter. This is from a Peter Milley, 83 Allen Avenue. Regarding application 952166 Allen Avenue, as a person deemed affected by this application and after discussion with other neighbors deemed affected by the application, I'm submitting the following questions as you consider the application. So this is a questions list. Number 1, is it the board's understanding that the photos of the structure in the application represent the recently built structure on the property? 2, is it the board's understanding that the property location map is representative of the recently built structure on the property? 3, are the dimensions of the current as-built new structure consistent with the building plan submitted? 4, what was the rationale in including or excluding properties listed on the lot comparison worksheet? 5, is it the board's understanding that the addition of a pool is an afterthought to the original building permit, therefore requiring a special permit rather than a smaller, newly constructed house from the start? Is the tiled patio area around the pool included in the lot coverage calculation? Will the current plantings between abutters on Allen Ave and Fairview Avenue remain, and will the vegetation closest to the septic system remain as is? Is there any, or where are the exterior HVAC components located? The BSS plot plan refers to a paved driveway and a proposed shell driveway / parking. Will they both continue to exist, with the shell driveway / parking area to be paved at a later date? Is the 1:20 scale on the BSS plot plan accurate? Considering recent climate change issues, would granting the special permit have a negative impact on water drainage in the neighborhood? And lastly, factoring in exceeding footprint dimensions and patio runoff, will swales be included in the landscape to mitigate runoff to abutters? Yeah, that must be his attached document, because then it says same person. I'm requesting that the attached document be included for discussion, which I guess was that list. And that's it.
All right. And for the applicant, we have Attorney Clower.
Good evening again, Mr. Hurry, members of the board. Again, for the record, my name is Kevin Clower, and I'm here tonight representing Jack and Nicole Corbett, the owners of 66 Allen Avenue, and the applicants in this matter. They are seeking permission to install a swimming pool, which will result in lot coverage by structure of 21.82%. 66 Allen Avenue is located in Belvedere Plains section of town. It's just north of Clinton Avenue. It's really a lovely, well-established residential neighborhood with smaller lots. This particular lot is just over 13,000 square feet, is in the residential C zoning district. Late in 2020, the Corbetts obtained a building permit in order to raise and rebuild the dwelling on the property. The structure that's nearing completion is a 4-bedroom, single-family home with a footprint of approximately 2,659 square feet, 2,659 square feet. The dwelling itself is entirely conforming as to setbacks. The overall property appears to be non-conforming to lot coverage by structure at 21.42%, where 20 is allowed by right and 25 by special permit. During this construction process, the Corbetts have decided that they would like to install a pool at the property. This will result in lot coverage by structure of 21.82%. With the removal of the garage, the increased lot coverage is only about 54 square feet. Therefore, we are requesting a special permit under 240-69E, which states that lot coverage by structures of up to 25% may be allowed by special permit. This board is asked to consider the size and height of the structure in relation to the average size and height of structures in the neighborhood, the effect of shadow on adjacent properties, the impact on views and vistas from public ways, and the effect of nitrogen on coastal embayments. As has been noted, the dwelling conforms with the requirements of the zoning bylaw. The pool is the only issue relative to the permit. And a pool, though a structure, doesn't really fit neatly into this category of size and height. So the addition of the pool will have no impact on the size and height of the dwelling as it relates to the average size and height of dwellings in the neighborhood. Has no impact on nitrogen in coastal abatements, no impact on shadow, and no impact on the views and vistas from public ways, or really the visual impact on the neighborhood. Despite no effect of size and height of structure, we did submit the lot comparison worksheet showing a number of properties with similarly sized footprints and lot coverage. We've received a copy of the questions posed by the neighbor. Those were sent to us by the zoning board yesterday, and I'm happy to address some of those questions as
Yeah, if you could just go through them.
Sure. So the photographs that were included in the application were actually taken from the assessor's records by the zoning staff. We didn't submit those photos. Our application stated that the property was under construction, and so that's the first question there. Our site plan reflects the structure that is under construction, including what's been permitted but simply not built out yet. There's a porch that hasn't been built, for instance. There's no change in the dwelling that's been approved for a building permit. The lot comparison worksheet, we simply list the properties that are found within a 300-foot radius based on the assessor's records. Tiled patio area is included in the calculation of lot coverage by structures, paving, and parking, but is not included in the lot coverage by structures. Patio is typically excluded from the definition of structure. Vegetation, as to the vegetation between Allen Avenue and Fairview, it's been evaluated by 2 landscape companies and an arborist. Their opinion has been pretty consistently that what is there is overgrown, unhealthy, and dying. And between that existing condition and the disruption due to the construction and the installation of the fence, it's unlikely that it would survive. However, the applicants intend to replant an environmentally sustainable landscape, natural plantings, trees, and flowers. Their goal is for this property to be beautiful and climate-friendly and sustainable. The driveways, both the paved driveway, which is the entrance to the garage, and the shell driveway, which is additional parking, are part of the approved building permit plan and will remain that way. The plan is to scale. It's a 1:20 scale. However, that's when you're viewing a full-size physical copy. It's not going to scale out on a smaller piece of paper or a computer screen. As to the impact on drainage, there's no negative impact from this proposed pool. The lot coverage by structures, paving, and parking will be 28.12%, which is well under the 40% that's allowed by right. They are installing dry wells, which have been reflected on a revised plan, and those were on the building permit plans and would have been required regardless. The pool itself will serve to catch rainwater and be distributed by the pool equipment to the dry wells. The existing long paved driveway and garage will be removed, which will also reduce stormwater runoff from the site. All of which is to say that this proposal is not substantially more detrimental than what exists as it pertains to the approved building. The project will not cause any adverse effects. There's no new nonconformity being created. There's no impact on the visual character of the neighborhood, and it meets the standards of 240-69E and 242-16. I'd be happy to address any questions that the board has.
Thank you, Attorney Clower. Jerry, any questions?
No, assuming you realize you need a permit to construct the pool.
Building permit, yes.
Yes, I mean, a swimming pool permit.
Yes.
It's a special.
Yeah. But we need this first.
Of course.
James?
No questions.
Scott?
So at present, you have a garage attached to the new structure,
Yes,
and you have a pre-existing garage.
which is going to be coming down.
What was the reason for leaving that?
I don't know.
Okay.
I wasn't involved in the permitting for the construction of the house, so I can't say.
Or anticipating that question? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Bob?
So, Mr. Clower, so why didn't the original permit come before us?
I have no idea.
Are you aware that the lot coverage for structures differs from the building permit to what you submitted here for the structure?
The only thing I can suspect is that the building permit plan may have shown the garage coming down.
No, it actually shows it on there, but so on the building permit plan, it shows the proposed structure is 19.26.
That's what
which is under the 20, which I understand. But what's actually there now is 21.42.
So if you take out the garage, it comes to about 19.3. So, because I did that math earlier, to take out the existing structures to figure out. So the only thing I can suspect is that.
So on the plan, I'm just going by the plan that they submitted.
Mhm.
And the plan that's submitted to us of what exists with the new construction, it says the proposed is 21.82, and it shows the garage is already being removed. So I guess my question is, if this was gonna go over 20%, the building department should have sent you here, or sent the applicant here. And it appears that what they did their application on was just a lower percentage than what you submitted here, and it's done by the same, Bunker did both plans, they're stamped. I would assume both are correct. And I'm only bringing it up because we've had this issues with other applications in the past. And I just think there should be some kind of explanation on why the building department is just under 20%, so they don't have to apply for a special permit. But now that you're here, you have a structure that's already been built, already over the 20%.
I have no reason to doubt Tom Bunker's numbers. Tom has been doing this for a long time and has a pretty stellar reputation. The only thing I can surmise is that the 19.26 is about what you get if you back out the garage, the standalone garage.
No, these are based on the proposed. So the 19.26 was based on your proposed with the garage removed. And then the 21.42 was based on the proposed with the garage removed.
Sure. No, this is showing garage to be removed, is what it says.
So did the other one. So are there any other
Not that I'm aware of.
dimensional nonconformities that show why this went up in percentage?
No, the building permit plans have not changed. There was one revision to the plans which dealt with the interior basement. But the building permit plans that were submitted are what is reflected on the plan today.
So do you know so on the plans you submitted to us versus the building department, what are the dimensional changes that appear in ours versus the building department?
I'm not aware of any dimensional changes. The only thing I can think of is that this plan that we have showing 21.24 includes the garage, which it does, because we're only showing an increase of 54 feet. Whereas the 19.24 plan submitted to the building department might have accounted for the garage having already been removed.
Because he's certifying both as if the garage was removed. I think there may be, that's what I'm asking. I just, if it's a smaller percentage, I understand. I'm just wondering if there are any other changes from what was actually submitted, without having to go over the whole plan with the building department, just so that we're all on the same basis, because we have situations that come up a lot where somebody submits something to the building department, and then someone submits something to us, and the building department does all their permitting on what they got. Our permitting is based on something else. I mean, your setbacks here are different. You got a setback on where that garage is being removed. You got a setback from that bulkhead, which on our plan is 34.2, and on the building department plan is 35.4. So that's a foot difference.
What's the setback to the street, I guess is the question.
Setback from the street on ours is 20.
It's 18.5.
So on ours, the proposed is 24, actually 20.
I meant from
Yeah.
Fairview,
Yeah,
sorry.
from Fairview. Actually, on our plan, 18.5. On the other plan, 18.4, but that's close. Setback in back, 19.5. Setback in,
Fairview's 13.6 from the garage.
well, that's from the garage, I was reading the other dimension.
I was looking at
And
the
on
other
here it's 13.5, so that's only off an inch. I think the difference is that other side of the house. There's a foot change. And it's not that we couldn't approve something at a larger percentage, it's just that, we should
I can tell
have to
you,
look at the differences in the plans all the time. We assume that whatever you submitted to the building department is what the applicant actually submits to the zoning.
so I can tell you that I did ask Tom specifically if this included the garage, and he said the existing does include the garage. We had that conversation.
Okay, so the existing plan that he submitted us,
The plan that we submitted, that I submitted to the board, showing
the garage has to be removed anyways, because
Sure,
it was
but
based, the building plan, I guess I would have the other question. If the building plan is based on the garage being removed, why wouldn't you remove the garage when you start construction?
I don't know why it has or has not been removed. I can tell you that I asked Tom Bunker specifically, this plan did include the garage, which is why there's such a minimal change in the square footage.
I guess that's my only question. Did they include all the permitted steps to be built? Are those included as part of the structure?
Yes.
I guess that's the only question I have.
Thank you, Brian. Scott? Bob hit upon some of the concerns I was having. Public comment, any questions, comments, or concerns regarding this project? Anyone?
Hi, my name is Peter Milley, 83 Allen Ave. I thank you for considering my questions and for the responses to the questions. I just had a question about the driveway, because there's a garage on the Fairview side that's new, that I imagine will have a driveway, and then there's talk of the existing driveway possibly that's on Allen Ave that also includes some shell parking, so I guess I just wanted a little clarification on which driveway is which that they're talking about. And just globally, my overarching question or concern, the reason I wrote the questions, is really the kind of climate issues we've been seeing. So just as an example, recently a really large house was built on Allen Ave, a little bit away from this home. And in the last rainstorms, at least 3 or 4 basements were pumping out water that I had never seen before in the 30 or so years that we've owned Allen Ave. So, I mean, my overall concern is to just make sure that, you know, that the environmental impact of these changes, you know, are not going to negatively affect the neighborhood as a whole. And I imagine that we have these zoning laws to protect a bunch of things, including this. And so that was just my concern in adding more than what is in the regulation for, I imagine, good reasons. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Eileen Vostock, 130 Allen Ave. Mine is just a comment to the zoning board, because I know these people, they have built a home on the street previously, several years ago. And in speaking with them, they've always said that they were going to have a pool. So I think by them doing this, it just allows them to build an oversized home on a lot and then come before you and go for the lot coverage. So I think that it's like more and more of this is happening. I think builders are totally aware of it and telling their clients about it, but we're creating these big homes on small lots. And it's just sad, I think. So just a comment.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Robert Butcher, 76 Allen Avenue. I'd just like a clarification on the shell driveway. I've seen shell driveways that go in and then they get paved over, and I'm not sure if paving is considered in lot coverage, and if it's, if this shell driveway will stay a shell driveway or whether it will be paved at a later date.
And we can get that answer for you. And just generally speaking, we do have 2 separate lot coverages. One is lot coverage by structures, and the other is lot coverage by structures, paving, and parking.
So as
anyone
the
else?
shell driveway, it wouldn't be included in the lot coverage, but if they ever decided to pave it, it would have to be included. It would have to be under the allowable 40% of the total.
They'd have to come in for another special permit. Or, possible.
Anyone else? Briefly.
Sure,
Please.
There was a mention about certain vegetation opinions by arborists that these things are dead or dying or whatever, and I was wondering if we have actual evidence reports of that rather than conversation. Because from my point of view, the vegetation looks pretty healthy, but I'm not an arborist.
Thank you. All right.
Hi, I'm Roseanne Milley, 83 Allen Ave. I'd like to address the vegetation as well. It's mature vegetation along this new construction and the butcher's house that I'm referring to, and they have approximately 30-foot leyland cypresses, which you may know take quite a few years to mature. They have a beautiful rhododendron, which is in full bloom, and I am concerned with what they may replace that with. As we just heard all about the noise, I am concerned about noise from a pool. I will hear that noise. And I think that mature plantings help to mitigate noise. They also help with drainage. And I think aesthetically, it softens the height of the house. The height of the house is higher than any of the surrounding houses. Also, this property removed many, many trees, some of which I admit needed to come down, but I am worried about drainage on the property. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else?
Can I do a question?
Yep.
Just for Mr. Clower, can you, so what is environmentally sustainable landscaping?
The applicants have no desire to live in a house that's not attractive, or with landscaping that's not attractive. I think they're looking for lower maintenance landscaping
So can you give us idea, like buffer, like are they putting in larger trees, or are they doing something like Town Hall does with?
They're not doing a zero escape like Town Hall. I can tell you that much. I mean, I'm sure they're willing to save whatever can be saved, but between construction and installation of a fence, ongoing construction of the site, installation of dry wells, there's going to be disruption to some of the vegetation that's there. The applicants have no desire to live in a home that is bereft of landscaping or is done in an unattractive manner.
So on the dry wells, why haven't they already installed them? Where the building is up?
I don't know that they have or haven't.
So you just said because they might have to install the dry wells, they may take care, so the street is still there?
I don't know if they've installed dry wells or not. They probably haven't installed dry wells nearby the pool. But they still haven't done the septic, because the septic is going in is where they're coming in to do most of the construction work.
Anything else? Any other questions from the board?
I'd be happy to address some of the questions presented by the abutters.
Go right ahead, Attorney Clower.
So the existing long driveway that leads to the detached garage will be removed. The garage is likewise to be removed. There will be a shell parking area at the northwestern corner of the lot, much where the existing driveway is today. The intent would be for that to remain a shell. If for some reason that became impracticable, they could conceivably pave it as long as they remained under the lot coverage by structures, paving, and parking of 40%. Currently, they're at 28.12%. So they could theoretically, I don't think they intend to. That's what I have been told. Because it is parking, I believe it is already included in the lot coverage by structures, paving, and parking, because it is accounted for as parking space. And like I said, I feel confident in saying this, because Jack and Nicole are friends of mine, that they would be happy to preserve whatever vegetation they are able to preserve.
All right. Anything else from the board?
What's the date of the original proposed plan?
The special permit?
Yes, excuse me, thank you.
It was dated September 28th, 2021. And we actually submitted a revision just showing the dry wells that were already part of the building permit plan with a revision date of 12/2 today.
Anything else, James?
No, thank you.
Anything else from the board?
No, just if we could have some discussion before we close.
Prior to closing?
Yeah.
Okay. Want to start us off then?
Yeah, so I suggest that we don't close. It's clear that Mr. Clower doesn't have the answer to the questions that I'm asking about regarding these changes in dimensions between the building department and here. He's not too sure about some of the landscaping because he doesn't have the information here from the applicants.
I've asked specific questions too. that
And
answers to.
Mr. Zelinski asked specific questions. When you're putting applications into the building department, any builder, they know what the percentages are, which makes them needing a special permit or not. And I just am very concerned that, the original house was very small, which is fine. That's eventually going to come down. Someone's going to change it. But I just find it unusual that it's just under the 20%, so they don't need the permit. Now it's over at 21. We don't know if, some of the testimony tonight was, you think it might be with the garage existing on or not. According to Punker's plan, I don't think it is. He's never done them that I've seen before like that, but, who knows? But we need answers to those questions. And as far as like landscaping or buffer, there is a tree line there. If they're saying the tree line will not survive, they should have something that says it's not going to survive, it has to come down. And if they are going to plant some kind of buffer in, we need to be very specific with sizes. We see projects all the time where there's a buffer to plant in, and we have the opinion that it's this nice green buffer, and, 4-foot tall bushes show up, and, everybody complains after the fact there's nothing to do. So my suggestion would be to continue this to another date. If the builder has to be here to answer the questions, along with the engineer, If the owners want to be here to answer anything, if they have any information they can submit from a landscaper.
Mr. Chairman, the site has to be a little more accessible for the board members. It was almost impossible to get on the site to inspect it. With that wraparound, the fence with all the wraparound stuff, you needed a machete or something to get in the back way.
Fair enough.
It just appears when we get a lot of these applications where the construction has already commenced because there's a building permit. We've always had an issue, and not this specific, builder, just in general, we always have an issue where there are always inconsistencies in the plans. And, Noreen and Ashley have to deal with it all the time, even when they do occupancy permits, that even on larger developments, they submit stuff comes back to the office, and they can't sign off because what was permitted at building, and then they need a modification. So it's not that I don't think you could get the extra percentage for fitting in with the area, but I want to get answers to this stuff from now on in advance. I think the builder should have known there was an issue by reviewing the plans, or his engineer, or somebody on his department.
Someone should have picked it up.
Somebody should have just picked it up versus all of a sudden, a letter comes in and you request a copy of the building permit, and then you have to, we get these little tiny copies, and you've got to go through these minuscule dimensions, and I never expected the dimensions to be off. I just assume, an inch or so is here or there, but.
So I have your questions, Mr. DeGant. Scott, what was the question that you had?
I want to know why they didn't take the shed down. And you said you had no idea, but then you, through testimony, said he's a good friend of yours, so maybe you can ask
He is
him
a
that for
friend.
the next one.
So.
Just curious.
Yeah,
'Cause it feels like that was a calculation, strategic kind of thing, and I'm just curious if it was or it wasn't.
All right, so we are looking at a continuation here.
And I'd like the builder to appear,
Fair
since
enough.
he's the, in control of the project.
Is it the builder or the engineer?
Well, the
For the
engineer, if I was
dimensions.
them, I'd bring the engineer too, but the builder is basing it on the plans. He's the one that's ultimately responsible for the build.
Realistically, I think we'd want the project manager, I suspect.
If the project manager can give us the direct questions, but sometimes we can't get them.
Sure.
So if you think it's more appropriate to have them both come.
All right, so we are looking at a continuation.
What's our next date?
You have to look at January 13th, or December 16 is packed together.
All right, so then I'd make a motion to continue to January 13.
Anyone gonna second that?
I'll second it.
All right, so motion to continue this hearing to January 13th.
You said 13, correct?
13?
Yeah.
It is 13, correct, yeah.
All right, motion was made by Bob, second by Scott. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all very much for your time tonight. We appreciate it.
Attorney Flower?
That's okay, I know.
Welcome, sir.
I
always forget about
It's always good to check.
Okay, moving on to our open meeting items, we do have voting the minutes, October 7th, October 21st, and November 4th.
Just the 7th.
Just the 7th tonight. So everyone had a chance to review the minutes for October 7th. Anyone like to make a motion then?
Can I abstain from the vote? I didn't review them. Yeah, so can you still have a vote with an abstention? It's okay, right? Yeah.
Of course you can.
It's okay.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
All right, motion approved made by Scott. Is there a second? Second by James. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And one abstention. All right, so that passes. Just for the record, October 21st and November 4th are tabled. Board updates. Are there any updates? None?
Well, the town planner leaves Friday.
Did we settle on a date for our breakfast thing?
Oh,
29th, good.
you're anticipating,
So we can get to the more
Item
important
number
thing,
4.
who's bringing what to eat?
yeah, all right. Board discussion, anything?
We should have a list that is approved
Yep.
in advance.
January board meeting is Saturday, January 29th, yeah.
I am pleased,
We'll see,
A
we'll see you there.
full gallon of
I am pleased to let the board know that we'll have a 40B attorney
Ooh.
specialist in the top in the state to come to your meeting on the 29th, specifically to answer 40B questions.
Excellent.
So if there are things that you guys want to ask in advance that I will provide.
Cool.
I missed part of that. Are they from the state or are they from
No,
private?
it's
Can
an
you reveal the name?
individual who has worked for communities and for developers.
Excellent, so they're on
But
both sides.
spent the bulk of the time representing communities. So I think it's a nice
Yeah.
perspective for the board to get some support on fine points. I guess the only suggestion would be to not ask about a specific property or case, but circumstances.
Procedural stuff.
Hypotheticals.
Right, in other words, you're not gonna identify a specific address. We don't do.
Right, so I have I guess a question or discussion, because I don't know if this would have to be done in executive or what the procedure is. It relates to the town manager has left. There was a public
Town
article.
planner.
Town planner, I'm sorry.
You
town
still
planner.
have a manager.
So town planner, there was an article in the Enterprise. Scott and I were both quoted in the article. It relates to the situation we had with removal of information from our website. It's very public, and I have concerns that that may have been an ethics issue. I brought up concerns at the time. I think there's concerns now. I don't know what the board decides to do on it, but I think it would be improper when we have all the information that was submitted. The town manager released a public response. The town planner had a letter that was printed. I don't know if there's any other documentation or not.
So did that suffice as an investigation, or what was that, what was the purpose of that statement, that, the rebuttal statement from the town?
I don't know, and quite honestly, I'm not as concerned, that's their problem. My concern is the board is aware of a whole that somebody has interfered in a hearing process. They put the office in a horrible position. An answer that something is on a public website and we don't have to do that it's just wrong. It makes the board look bad.
And it's a little disconcerting to have your quote in
the
an article
paper, and
as part of this.
Yeah, so I think I am drawn into it. I think the board is drawn into it just by the article. And I think the board needs to respond, and I think we should formally, as a board, whether it's executive session or public, I don't know how you want to handle it, but I think we need to discuss it, and I think a letter should be sent into the state that we as a board have an issue that our process was interfered with.
Would we need outside legal representation for that, Terry?
I mean,
I think you're gonna say yes, but I don't.
Pardon?
Excuse me, I think the answer is gonna be yes, because the town attorney's probably gonna represent the town.
Because there's gotta be, when you do that, you can't stuff that back into a box. There's gonna have to be legal ramifications when that's done. And it's gonna open Pandora's box, and the lawyers on this board can't respond as lawyers.
No,
only board members.
I think you just, I think you
I'm
respond.
certainly not prepared to argue that.
No, and I don't
Right?
think I don't think the board even has to worry about the investigation. If there is an appearance,
I'm not talking about the investigation, I'm talking about the submittal of an ethics violation.
well, I mean, Frank has us all take the ethics course. It says if there's a violation, you should do a submittal and say if you have concerns. So I don't even think it's a thing you have to assume by attorney. If the board feels that their process was interfered with, you can give the copy of the article and everything else, and you send it to the state, and you say that we feel there is an appearance of an interference. This is what the information is. We would like you to
So
investigate
it would be
it.
more of an inquiry.
Yeah, we would like you to investigate it and see if it has merit or not as a violation.
So before we go into any more details, if you would like, I can consult with Noreen about trying to enter into executive session. There's, I want to say either 9 or maybe 10 reasons why we can. So if you allow me to talk to Noreen, we can figure out whether we can properly enter into executive session as a board regarding this, or
honestly, if we have to.
If we have to.
I mean, yeah, if we have to,
Because the information we're inquiring about has already been made public.
It's all public.
In public session.
The other issue we had is that we've got minutes of our meeting. We've got testimonies from our meeting, that people gave us testimony regarding the same project, and nothing has been followed up.
Right.
Now, the state could find out there's no issue, but, you know, out of anything else,
No, I'm just,
interfering in a public process, if somebody did, the state needs to be notified, and the state needs to decide if they want to investigate or not. At that point, they'll contact whoever they need.
right.
I still like the idea of
So my
executive session,
concern is,
if possible.
if we're taking some sort of legal position as a board, I just want to make sure that we convene properly under executive session to discuss that, because one of the reasons why you do enter into executive session is.
Yeah, so find
So
out.
why don't we
Is to
pump the
not
brakes
damage-
right now
Yeah.
until you can
You do
find
your-
out,
you do
confer
your-
with our administrator?
Confer with it. I just want it out there, so that if the state comes knocking and says, why didn't you submit? If you thought it was a violation, that we can give a response.
Because don't forget, we could still be called if someone else files.
I would expect to be
So we
called.
need
They
protection
named
from
us in
that,
an
too.
article. I mean, quite honestly,
So-
we were named.
Okay.
But the town manager also put out a public statement from his point of view. I mean, I will be right in the middle. I think on one side it looks bad. I think on the other side, if the statement put out by the town manager is accurate.
And I think that's what the state would look into.
Well, I
Those
mean,
statements
we
have
could
been
look
made, and
in-
is it accurate or
we
not?
could
We
look
don't
into
know.
it too.
Yeah, I think
Right
we need
now,
to talk.
Jerry,
stop
just, I
talking
mean,
details.
your points are valid, but I think we need to stop.
Well, I just don't want people making statements that there's an apparent violation, because we don't know.
No one said that.
It's an inquiry.
No one said
Well,
that.
even an inquiry. I think it's very serious to say in public that we want to go to the ethics board, but yet we may not have all the information.
But Jerry, no one said that either, so
well-
I think the appropriate thing to do is just to take everything under consideration.
agree.
See if we can properly enter into executive session.
I concur.
Maybe the answer is not. Maybe the answer is no. I don't know.
So you
at
can
this
find
point,
out what
so-
needs to be done to see what we can go forward.
All right.
But this is our only venue to make that inquiry
Right,
with
right,
you
right.
and Noreen.
Yeah,
I mean,
public
there
and
was no
everybody
other way
knows.
to
It's
do
just-
that.
Yeah. I just want to.
Publicly.
I just want to also protect the board's potential
Absolutely.
position on that matter at the same time, so.
What's next, boss?
Future agenda items, anything? All right. Next meeting is December 16th here at Town Hall. See everyone then.